If you ask me if I want to pitch, I never want to stop pitching. But I know that there is going to become a time when that's going to happen. So I haven't really thought about it, but I know that, it's part of getting older.
That was a classic Lance Lynn performance last night with Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson. I'm Brandon Kiley. That is Lance Lynn after the game. Audio courtesy of Bally Sports Midwest. 6 innings, 4 hits allowed, 2 walks, 5 strikeouts. Of course, did allow the 1 home run, and that was the run that he allowed in that game.
Those don't matter.
Alex, he gives you a quality start in what very well could be the final start of his Cardinals career and possibly the final start of his Major League Baseball career. Cardinals get a win last night, 3-1, and we begin with Lance Lynn, who is the story of the day today. Alex, he has a 3.85 ERA for the Cardinals this season. He ended up giving them like 115 innings on the season overall. It wasn't exactly what the doctor ordered for this rotation, but I don't think you could have asked for a whole lot more. 25 starts, sub-4 ERA, we all would have signed up for that before the season. So as you hear him post-game, and I'm going to play Ollie Marmol here in just a moment as well on Lance Lynn's future, I'm curious where you think things stand for him with the Cardinals and for him with his Major League Baseball career. Here's Ollie Marmol when asked last night about Lance Lynn's future.
Can he pitch beyond the season? I mean, does he have enough left to keep going?
Lance can do whatever he wants, no doubt. I mean, this is a tough dude that, I'm never going to bet against him. Yeah.
Alex, do you think he has anything left? Because it sure sounds like that was the last pitch that he's going to throw this season. Do you think he's back next year, or do you think he's back in Major League Baseball next season?
I think he's back in Major League Baseball next season, because if you're Lance Lynn, you've seen how the end of your season has gone. Now, all of this is going to be his health-wise, because, of course, he has been dealing with this injury that kept him out for a pretty significant amount of time. Whatever that means, if you're Lance Lynn in the last 5 games that you've pitched 27 total innings with a 1.67 ERA, you're thinking, oh, yeah, I got plenty more in the tank if I'm Lance Lynn. And if you're other teams, if I'm the Cardinals, you know how the Cardinals front office operates. They are seeing this and like, oh my God, we might have another top pitcher that we could bring back for $10 million.
I was going to say for only $10 million.
If the Cardinals are seeing Lance Lynn now, they're like, oh my God, and he's got great leadership skills. But hearing the way Lance talked, hearing the way that Ollie talked, it sure seems like that was the last time we see Lance Lynn as a Cardinal this season, because they've got guys that you probably should have found out who they are prior to this point, but they've got guys that seemingly are at the position that you want to see how they pitch, Michael McGreevy being one of them. The Cardinals are officially, unofficially out of the playoff conversation now. And Lance, you want him to go out on a positive note if you're Ollie Marmol. You don't want to throw him back out there one more time and give up 10 earned runs and be like, oh, God, that's the way people remember Lance? So if you're asking me if this is the last time we see Lance Lynn, I do think so this season. After how he's pitched these last few games, injury set aside, I think if you're Lance Lynn, you're thinking, I got one more year in me.
Yeah, I think it's the last start we saw in a Cardinals uniform. I don't think they will bring him back next year. I do think he can pitch at Major League Baseball level again, and I think he will. I mean, hearing that post-game audio from him last night, that didn't sound like a guy that's ready to retire. That sounded like a guy that could go out and go another season. I think there's just something wrong with him right now, an injury that's bugging him. I mean, his velo was down last night, so something's clearly bothering him.
Yeah, it's his knee.
His knee's bothering him. He'll shut it down this year. I wouldn't doubt that if he wants to pitch in, and based on the way he sounds, it sounds like he wants to keep going. Somebody will pay Lance Lynn to come in their rotation, serve as a number 5, and hope that they can get the exact same thing that the St. Louis Cardinals got out of him.
I think that was it, man. I think there's a decent chance you just watched the end of Lance Lynn's Major League career. And I don't say that with any ill will towards him. The guy's 37 years old. He's been pitching now since 2011 in Major League Baseball. He just came back to the team that developed him, and he had a ton of great memories with. He has talked openly and honestly about how he used to maybe not see the value in the quote-unquote Cardinal way, and how he now appreciates it more after spending time in other organizations that maybe, I don't know, don't have the same amount of history and the same amount of accountability within the clubhouse.
How dare you?
He talked about how much he enjoyed spending time with the young guys and how he was as much grateful for what he was able to do for them this season, especially a guy like Andre Palante, as to what he was able to do on the field. That sounds like a guy that's come to terms with the facts, to me, with this being his final year. I think this was a perfect full circle moment for Lance Lynn. Last night, he had the opportunity to go out there one more time at Busch Stadium, at the place where it all began for him, and pitched what was a pretty damn good game by Lance Lynn, and it was full of all of the Lynn-isms. He went out there, he gave up a rocket for a home run. That's part of it.
Threw only fastballs.
He found a way to wiggle out of a couple of jams. That's part of it. He cussed out one of his opponents as he was at the plate.
Grabbed his junk.
And walked off the mound and went back towards the dugout. And then, my personal favorite, when a dude hit a rocket 106 miles per hour towards center field against him and was shocked that it didn't go out of the park in Rowdy Tellez, Lance Lynn looked at him, stared him down, and said, that doesn't work here at Busch Stadium. You gotta pull it here to be able to get a home run at Busch. All of it was just perfect for that to be the last time that we see Lance Lynn on the mound. So maybe this is me telling myself a little bit of a story that I kind of want that to be the last time, for that to be the way that he walks off. I also think it's very likely that that ends up being the case. I don't think the Cardinals are going to have to make a decision on him. I think he's going to make the decision himself of, that was it for me. I had a great career. I was super successful. I think he's probably going to one day be in a red jacket for the Cardinals. I think he's a future Cardinals Hall of Famer personally. And I think that's going to be the end for Lance Lynn, both here and in Major League Baseball.
Yeah, I if you're Lance, though, and I'm only putting myself in Lance's shoes, if you're Lance, I do wonder if you look at that and you say, I want to try and chase a World Series at least one more time, and you see what options are out there for you. And when the options are only teams that are going to be the bottom dwellers and you might be in the AAA team, that's when you call it. I don't know if they call it right away.
We do have a little bit of news. This comes from Katie Wu. It is a part of our conversation that we are having right now. Katie Wu tweets, expect Michael McGreevy, who was scratched from his start for Memphis yesterday, to join the active Cardinals roster today. With St. Louis still mulling over potential rotation changes, it seems likely that McGreevy will be available in long relief, at least for right now.
Are you kidding me?
Oh, dumb Cardinals.
Why?
Why?
Why? Don't try and justify this. This is a rhetorical question. Why?
I'm not going to justify it. I said just peek behind the curtain during our pre-show meeting, I said, doesn't it feel kind of Cardinals-y where they would call up like a McGreevy and they would just put him in the bullpen
and I said,
start?
Tanner, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Well, even this team wouldn't do something that absurd.
Who needs more reps before him? Who do you need to see more of before you're like, oh, we should probably see what Michael McGreevy's got?
I think that Gray should stay in the rotation.
Well, there's a bold statement.
I'm going to go through this with you.
I thought you were going to say, like, Michael.
I think Fetty should stay in the rotation.
Agreed.
I think Gibson should stay in the rotation.
Okay.
I think Palante should stay in the rotation.
Hold on. Why should Gibson stay in the rotation?
What do you mean? Because he's been good and he's probably going to be back next year.
That's fine, but you know what he is. You know what he's got.
What are you going to do with him?
I have no problem
Rogue
with him.
back injury, man.
I have
rest
no
it the
issues
rest of
with
the
Kyle
way.
Gibson starting a couple of more games and continuing to, like, finish this thing out the way that he started it, right? My mom always told me growing up, if you start something, you got to finish it. He's going to finish it.
I'm a quitter at heart, but yeah.
Not even quitting. You know I'm going to be back. You know what I offer you? I don't really need to do this 2 more times.
You have an expanded roster right now, Alex, which allows for one extra reliever. You've already been going with the 6-man rotation to accommodate for Lance Lynn continuing to be in the rotation. So you got 2 choices. Either you continue with the 6-man rotation as you had previously been doing anyways, with a bunch of dudes that are running on fumes. That's one option. And just put Michael McGreevy into the Lance Lynn spot. Or option 2, you pull Miles Michaelis from the rotation, you keep going with your 5-man rotation, and you have Michael McGreevy start there. They obviously are unwilling to do either of those things.
They're like, we want more Steven Matz.
I liked either one of those.
My guess is because they're on, this is my only assumption, because they're on a 6-man rotation, they can have him throw either today or tomorrow if they were to get into a bad spot. And so technically he is available. And if they don't use him in the next 2 days, they will save him for that spot where Lance Lynn was previously scheduled to start, which is next Tuesday. So you need the 4 days between. Maybe even they push up Sonny Gray a day because he's technically got a full week apart. He could start like next Wednesday if you had to have McGreevy come in one of the next 2 days. That's not the end of the world to me. I'm not super worried about that. It is weird. I wish you would have a way to maximize the number of starts that he gets, which would mean putting him potentially on schedule to start on Sunday. But I don't think this is the end of the world, even though it is continuing a trend of it kind of being a weird way to announce something like this.
I don't mind that. And if you are going to call him up, what's weird is, like, I don't know why you wouldn't call it just a regular bullpen arm. Like, who's down in the minors right now? Roycroft, I think, is down in the minors. Like,
isn't he up here?
I have no idea. One of the arms that's on the Memphis shuttle is down there.
Okay.
Yeah, Roycroft is down.
Yeah, okay, I thought Roycroft was down there. So
I thought that was the case, but then Alex made me reconsider.
Well, and I thought Leahy was down there because Roycroft came up.
But the reason I mentioned that is because I understand what you're going to do if you're going to put him in the bullpen, because you probably don't want him going like 11 days between throwing and having a start. You probably want him in game action. But if that's the case, if you knew you were going to do this with Lance Lynn, if you're going to put him on the IL to end his season, well, why not just have McGreevy make his start yesterday, call up a bullpen arm when you put Lynn on the IL, you've got an extra bullpen arm available, and then when it does roll back around to that spot, rather than this weird messaging which is going on currently, you just call up McGreevy, he makes the final 2 starts, boom. Now you've got it. There's no questions asked. It looks a lot smoother on the transaction page than, hey, he's going to be in long relief. Well, and then we'll for now, stay patient for now.
I said, just kind of offhand, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line, by the way. We'll finish on this to kind of go back to Lance Lynn for a moment. From the 573, Red Jacket, are you kidding me? State your case. I think it's pretty easy to see that Lance Lynn is going to be a problem. I would assume a future Cardinals Hall of Famer. Do you guys disagree with that? 15% above league average as a pitcher here, threw more than 1,000 innings in a Cardinals uniform, had a 3.4 ERA. The case to me is super easy. Hey, look at what Matt Morris did.
I was
just getting a red jacket,
yep.
And then compare that to what Lance Lynn did here in St. Louis. It was 8 years for Matt Morris. It was 7 years for Lance Lynn. It was 1,300 innings in St. Louis for Matt Morris. It's over 1,000, almost 1,100 for Lance Lynn. If you're looking at ERAs, it was 3.6 for Matt Morris. It's a 3.4 for Lance Lynn. If you're looking at ERA plus, you want to get a little bit more analytical with it. For Matt Morris here in St. Louis, it was 117. For Lance Lynn, it's 115 in his time here in St. Louis. I think that is your corollary. You look at what Matt Morris was and what Lance Lynn was, and you look at the success that those respective teams had. That's it. I mean, that's how he gets in, is just the same way that Matt Morris did to me. And, like, you have all the leadership, that kind of stuff, super likable. I think Lance Lynn's a future Cardinals Hall of Famer.
Yeah. The first thing I thought of was Matt Morris is a Cardinals Hall of Famer, and Matt Morris is kind of what Lance Lynn's time in St. Louis was. I mean, also questioning somebody who is or is not going to be a Cardinals Hall of Famer. Like, we know how the Cardinals Hall of Fame works. The fans decide who get to go in, and fans love Lance Lynn. So it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think he will be a Hall of Famer. I mean, you just read off all those numbers, and it's right in line with Matt Morris. And Morris got in. So I expect he'll get in. I think it makes all the sense in the world to think that he's one of the next Cardinals Hall of Famers, one of, 3 or 4 on this team.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised that there's as much pushback as there has been on the text line. 314-399.
People are angry these days, man.
9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. I mean, even if you just want to go with something as simple as, like, strikeouts, right? He's top 6 in team history right now, and Matt Morris is behind him. So, yeah, I think he's going to get in. I think he's probably going to be a Cardinals Hall of Famer, right, wrong, or indifferent, and I personally think it's right. I think he's deserving of being a Red Jacket member down the road. With Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. We are broadcasting live at the E&B Granite Studios out at the Centene Community Ice Center because today was Media Day for the St. Louis Blues. They came around and all of their stuff, made their rounds this morning with Valley Sports Midwest, with us, everybody in between. So we are out here today at the E&B Granite Studios. We will also be here tomorrow and Friday. The morning show will be here tomorrow as well. They are expected to be joined by Doug Armstrong, the Blues president of hockey operations, tomorrow. So be sure to stay tuned for that tomorrow morning on the opening drive. We will have players coming through tomorrow and Friday. Chris Kerber, the voice of the Blues, joins us coming up in just about 15 minutes or so. But coming up next, we do want to talk a little bit about the Blues today. What are your expectations for this team heading into 2024? Excited for Alex to tell us how they're going to get to 100 points next year on 101 ESPN.
wall Blues coverage is right here. 101 ESPN is live from the Centene Community Ice Center. Brought to you by Bud Light and E&B Granite. Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
Alex, the Blues finished last season just outside of a playoff spot. They ended up being competitive most of the season, but finished the year with 92 points in the Western Conference. Now, if they were in the Eastern Conference, they would have been a little closer. If they were in the Metro, hell, they would have made the playoffs last year.
Been a top 3 team in the Metro.
So it wasn't a bad season necessarily for the Blues, but it was a bit underwhelming, and at times it was very frustrating, so much so that they fired their head coach, their Stanley Cup winning head coach, midway through the year. With Alex and T-Bone on BK, we're broadcasting live at the E&B Granite Studios out at the Centene Community Ice Center, where we will be for each of the next 3 shows. Alex, what are your expectations going into this season? I know the risk of me asking this question to you first is that you paint us in a bad light.
Start with T-Bone.
Become overly negative, but explain to us why you're high on the Blues heading into this season and why this is going to be different than it has been the last couple of years, Alex.
Okay, well, didn't appreciate the sarcasm. Welcome back, the Tone Ranger, ladies and gentlemen. I think this is a wild card team. I don't think this is a top 3 team in the Central Division. I think those are pretty clear-cut. 4 teams are fighting for those 3 spots in the Central Division, and then I think there will be 2 spots in the wild card that will be allocated to Central Division teams, and really the competition to me is going to be the Winnipeg Jets, the Minnesota Wild, and the St. Louis Blues for those wild card spots. I do look at St. Louis as an improved group. I think they're going to be better than people are giving them credit for. I think certain areas about this team add a couple of extra wins. I don't think this team falls flat like they did against some of these lesser opponents like last season with San Jose. I think they've got more offense in them because of the depth of scoring, and I do believe that defense is going to be improved. So when I look at the landscape, I don't think the Pacific Division is very interesting this season. I think you've got 3 teams that are potential playoff teams and then a lot of other teams that are either rebuilding or reshuffling some things around. I think the strength is going to be in the Central, and I put the Blues in the same category as the Minnesota Wild, which I think a lot of people view Minnesota as a team that could be in the playoffs.
And that's kind of where I've stuck with this since their offseason was completed. I think they're kind of about where the Wild finished last year, like 87 points, anywhere between like 85 and 90 points is kind of where I think they are.
So you think they're worse point-wise?
I think they're worse point-wise.
You're not a playoff team with those.
Yeah, I don't think they're a playoff team going into the year, and I do think they're going to be worse point-wise, but I do think they are built better. Yeah. I just think the West is better around them, and I think that's what made this tough for this offseason, because if they were going into last season with this roster that they had, I would have felt pretty good about it going into last year's playoff picture, because we didn't really know what Nashville was going to be going into last year. But I do think when you look at them point-wise, and the Central Division is loaded. I mean, Utah, I think, is going to be a better hockey team than people are expecting. I think you're going to end up seeing them with fewer points, but you're going to feel better about them when the season ends.
Yeah, I think 96 to 98 points is kind of my sweet spot for this team.
Can we go into the trust tree for a moment together?
Yeah.
Just the 3 of us.
I kind of let it out right there.
BK is going to say that they're picking top 5.
I don't know what to expect out of this team. Like, that's my honest explanation as to where I'm at with them. I don't know. I think they could be Nashville from last year. I think you could get close to 100 points. I think that's in their range of outcomes because I think they're way deeper. And if you get some positive return, like if Shin has a bounce-back season this year, he could be a number 2 center. Not a contender for a Stanley Cup, but on a good team.
Oh, yeah.
If you get some positive returns by midseason from Dalibor Dvorsky and you decide, you know what, we're going to bring him along, but we think he can be a third-line center for us right now, well, that's a pretty high ceiling third line center for you. I think there's real upside to this bottom 6 group in terms of, hey, a lot of those guys, 15 goal upside from them, even on your 4th line this year. And they probably won't have the playing time to accomplish that, but they have that kind of potential. I think the blue line should be better than what it's been each of the last few seasons. Like, I think Suter's got a little something left. I think Broberg has real reasons to be excited about.
Dude is big.
I think your goalies, I mean, they're the same as they were a year ago. Like, and I think just the vibes of the team feel better than they have in the past. We talked to a bunch of the guys. Dude, I think the Joseph brothers are immediately going to become fan favorites. Immediately upon their arrival here in St. Louis. And I think that's something that this team has needed desperately, is some personality to be re-injected into that locker room. And it can't just be one guy. It's got to be organic, and it's got to be something that is there from multiple different pieces of that locker room. And I think they might finally have that again. So what are the expectations heading into the season? My honest answer is I don't know, because there's a flip side of the coin to everything that I just said.
Yeah.
Dvorsky might not be ready. Shin might not be a second-line center this year. Your blue line, maybe it's not time for Broberg just yet to be a top 4 defenseman. So when you have those kinds of things that it could go in either direction, it's really hard to project. So my end result, like as of today, somewhere between 90 and 95 points is what I'm expecting.
Yeah.
Similar to what they were last year. But I think the upside is better than it was last year. I think the long-term outlook is much better than it was last year. And I think T-Bone's right that the downside is a little lower just because you have so many young guys that you're counting on in significant roles.
Yeah, I think the distraction side of it is gone too, like last season. Last season, you went into it where people were asking if Craig Berube was on the hot seat. You were asking what the offense was going to look like. You were saying, well, the defense hasn't improved. This year, I think a lot more people are either not even talking about the Blues or they're looking at them as like, hey, just keep an eye out for them. And sometimes those distractions being gone benefit you. The personality, I think, is so important, and I know we joke around about how I think it's so valuable compared to what you guys do, but like
I think it matters. I just don't place the same value. Like if you told me, hey, you've got one guy that brings great personality to the locker room, but he scores 10 goals, and another guy that maybe is just like a run-of-the-mill dude in the locker room that doesn't really bring anything extra, but he's going to score me 25.
I'll take that guy.
I'll take the second guy every day of the week, and I think that's probably where
understandable. But when there are lows, because there will be lows, and you comped it to the Nashville Predators, and I mean Nashville went through one of those lows last season, so much so that their head coach and GM basically said you can't go to a concert after a game because you guys suck, and then they went on their run.
If we had that rule, we'd be a playoff team.
Probably. I do think when you have those guys, you limit those lows. And limiting those lows are something that the Blues still weren't good at last season. And when you limit those lows, well, now you're adding 3, 4, 5 more wins to your schedule rather than what last season was. So I still say somewhere between 95 and 98 points is where I'm at with this team. And yes, the Central Division is going to be tough, but I do think we're getting out over our skates a little bit on some of these Central Division teams, which allows the internal competition amongst these teams to get into a playoff spot.
Can I tell you the thing that I think we're getting out over our skates on the Blues, and it's why I'm probably lower, and it's because I'm a little bit lower on it and am not looking at the ceiling of it. I don't know if they still have the depth of scoring they need, and that's where I'm lower. You know, and I understand Holloway only played, 39 games last year, 38 games with the Oilers. Texier was the first year in which he had 78 games and he scored 12 goals. Well, if they're playing consistent, they know their role. They're going to be the goal scorers. That's the common answer. They're going to be guys that can get to 15 plus. Mark Font says there's a reason they didn't play a lot of games. You know, there's a reason that Holloway only played 38 with the Edmonton Oilers. But that's why I'm a little bit lower, is I'm trying not to get kind of out over my skis a little bit on their depth of scoring. I think they probably hit on one of those guys. That's typically how this goes. You know, they bring in a Fox, they bring in a Holloway, they bring in a Texier. One of those guys, a Joseph, one of those guys is going to hit the ceiling we're talking about.
I think
odds are the others aren't.
So many that it might be 2 or 3 of them. And when I say hit, the ceiling on it is not all that high. Like the ceiling on most of the guys that you just talked about, 15 goals.
Oh, yeah.
But that's okay. Like the thing that is nice about the way that this roster has been constructed, in my opinion, is that you're not asking them to be like a couple of years ago, Alex. I remember we had the conversation. This is post David Perron leaving via free agency. And the question was, okay, who's replacing that production for you? And the answer eventually was nobody. Yeah. Like they didn't have anybody to replace the production. But early on, I remember we had the conversation, and early on it was, well, Jake Neighbors might be that guy. And you ended up being correct that it was Jake Neighbors who replaced that production. It just took 2 years.
Yeah.
And that's not an indictment on Jake Neighbors. He was unbelievably young, and they asked him to be something that he was unprepared to be in that first season.
Yeah.
And so, like, you look back on it, and it's like, man, that was asking too much too quickly out of him, but they ended up having the right idea as to what his role could become down the road. That's what I guess the question is about this team is, are these guys ready for that role now? Is it going to take 2 years? Where are we on their development? And it's impossible for any of us to know the answer to that because the Blues don't honestly know the answers to those questions just yet. That's what this season is going to be about. I like that we have questions to ask, though, that have that kind of upside. Because in previous seasons, it's been, well, some of the guys that they're bringing in, and somebody on the text line compared it to what the Cardinals do, they're 28, 29, 30-plus years old. There's no long-term answers there that could be a part of this for the next 3 to 5 years. It's just, hey, can you fill this gap for us while we wait for the young guy? That's what the Cardinals do. Look at their rotation this year. None of those guys are going to be around long-term while you're still waiting on guys like Tink Kent and Quinn Matthews, et cetera. The players that they brought in this offseason are expected to be that. And it's not going to be everybody, but some of them will be here for the next 3 to 5 years, and that to me is exciting.
Well, and to T-Bone's point of talking about guys, like why didn't they get those opportunities where they were at? I do think like Fox and Matthew Joseph makes a lot of sense. Like those guys were third-line guys that were getting minutes with the Senators and the Stars, and it just never panned out for them. But I look at Holloway and Texier, and these are two guys that were used in fourth-line roles, kind of like what Jake Neighbors was in that first season with the Blues. And the difference was Jake Neighbors would still get some opportunities because it wasn't working. Holloway was never getting opportunities because you got McDavid and Draisaitl and freaking Nugent Hopkins. Like, you got all these guys that are out there, and they were like, well, there's no point in this. Let's keep them in the minors. Kind of what the Blues are going to do with Zach Bolduc and Dvorsky this season. So I do think that at least they're going to get more opportunities to go out there and have a little bit more freedom, because when you're Holloway with the Edmonton Oilers and you screw up, guess what? You're going back to the minor leagues, or you're not going to play. To where now, you screw up if you're Holloway, you're going to be back out there in the third line because there's no other options.
He's Alex. That's T-Bone on BK. We've got Grant Francis back in the studio for us today as we're broadcasting live at the E&B Granite Studios out of the Centene Community Ice Center. Today is the unofficial start of training camp for the Blues. They had media day this morning. Tomorrow, they will take the ice officially for their first day of training camp. The opening drive will be here from 7 to 10. They're expected to be joined by Blues President of Hockey Operations, Doug Armstrong. We will be here tomorrow and Friday talking to some of the players as they come off the ice from the first couple of days of training camp. Coming up next, we're continuing our Blues conversation with Chris Kerber. He's the voice to the Blues. He joins us next year on 101 ESPN.
All right, you've heard me talk about Classic Air Care for a while, and you've also heard me talk about the need to make sure that your HVAC unit is serviced. Do it regularly. Make sure you do it once a year. Classic Air Care has service plans. They have plans where you can get on. It saves you money. It gets you on the schedule, and then it's out of sight, out of mind. They show up. They take care of it. Why is it important? I once had a company come out to service a unit and found a crack in a heating unit that you never would have known. It doesn't make sounds. The unit was working fine. Had that crack gone all the way through, that could have caused a massive CO2 problem in the house. And you know the trouble. It's because of that I now have CO2 sensors in my house. You want to make sure that this unit is running perfectly for you, not only for your safety, but for your comfort. So go online to ClassicAirCare.com. You can call them. You can sign up for their care plans as well. You can order filters from them to boot. It's all available for you. They make life easy. It's Classic Air Care. They've been making people comfortable since 1926.
Grit Francis here with a SportsCenter update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Cardinals are back above 500, 76-75 as Lance Lynn picked up the win last night. He went 6 innings, only allowed 4 hits and 1 earned run against, and Jordan Walker hit the go-ahead home run in the 4th inning as the Cardinals beat the Buccos 3-1 at Busch Stadium last night. They'll be back against the Pirates tonight, game 3 of 4 of this series against Pittsburgh. It'll be Sonny Gray getting the start for the Cardinals, and first pitch will be at 6:45. And then tonight here on 101 ESPN, a little bit of a later game. We've got Mariners and Yankees. That game will be starting at 8:40, pregame at 8 o'clock right here on 101 ESPN. I'm Grant Francis. The SportsCenter update's been driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
Alongside Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. We are broadcasting live at the E&B Granite Studios out of the Centene Community Ice Center, and we are happy to be joined in studio today by the voice of the Blues. It's Chris Kerber joining us here on BK and Ferrario, as he does each and every Wednesday throughout the NHL season. Kerbs, this is the unofficial start of Blues season for you. How you doing today, my man?
I'm doing awesome. I'm looking at this E&B counter out here that was our home during COVID, and I've got E&B Granite at behind my bar at home and stuff. So as you two young family guys get moving and Tanner starts to figure out the renovation world at some point as well, keep these guys in mind because they've been a great sponsor of this studio since it opened up.
Since 2019.
Since it opened up. You want to know what this room was originally scheduled to be? A nursing room.
That makes sense.
Because, with it being such a family place, if you come out here to Centene and you look over and you see the booths and stuff, they actually designed that in mind. And the thought process was that we know that parents have to bring brothers and sisters to practices sometimes, okay? Yeah. Well, they wanted to make it comfortable for kids and stuff to do homework. This actually was going to kind of be a little bit of a family room for that kind of thing. But
they said, you know what, 101 ESPN, we'll put you in.
Well, the size of the space, and we had talked about when the Blues first came over to 101, we talked about some studio space and a place to be able to broadcast from in here, and it ended up being such a perfect fit. Who'd have known that COVID was going to come in and this would be come home for a while?
Yeah, well, don't lie, Curbs. You loved those 9:30 puck drops with you, me, Joe, and Doty here locked up in the studio together.
Yeah, we'd grab some Paul Manos, we'd grab some different restaurants, we'd come out, we'd have a late dinner. Everybody, listen, became social because we were locked up like everybody else was. So
it was able to talk to somebody else.
It's a great setup out here. So glad you guys are here. It's a kind of a fun morning to see these guys with a little bit of personality.
Yeah, we're going to be out here the next 2 days. We'll be out here every Friday throughout the NHL season as well. So we'll be hoping to get more players throughout, kind of coming and going as they please after practice a couple of times throughout the season. So excited for all of that. Curbs, we just asked this question in our last segment. I'm curious your answer to it. What are your expectations for this season? Because I think for me, it's probably the most difficult team to put like a point total on that I've seen since I've been back here in St. Louis, and I got here in 2016. I can't remember a team that I had more difficulty putting a specific number on than this one. Where do you fall?
I think that's a very fair way to look at it. My expectations on this season, honestly, I'm basing it solely on the narrative of Doug Armstrong. And that is, where is this team? I think, honestly, if you talk to Drew Bannister, as we have, and as you guys did at that media day last week, if you talk to the players, there is a real level of excitement, of a youthful energy to what this team has right now. And I think that's going to permeate through. We asked Pavel Buchnevich. Here's a perfect example. Okay, they want him to try and play some center.
Yeah.
Okay. It was actually discussed as kind of one of the early questions in the contract process. And will you play center? Do you have to play wing? Joe Vitale just literally asked him. He goes, well, what do you think? Would you rather play wing or center? He goes, I don't care. I want to win. He goes, put me where we need to win, and let's get good players. I mean, that is the approach. And he said that to me at the end of last season when I asked if he wanted to come back to St. Louis. So roundabout way of kind of going about it, I honestly think that if the Blues have a season like they had last year with 93 points, that's a good year.
Given the amount of youth.
Given the amount of youth, given the development, given the steps that you're going to take, you've got to fight. You got to put in the Dylan Holloways. You got to put in the Brobergs. You've got to give these young guys opportunities.
And let them fail.
Bingo. And when you do that, you're going to make mistakes that are going to cost you games.
Yep.
One of the reasons that the Blues were such an intriguing option for Broberg and Holloway is those opportunities weren't really there in Edmonton, right? And we saw that here in 1920. Right? It's hard to get young guys in a lineup when you're there. So
look at the Cardinals for a decade. They were always contending, and so it becomes really difficult to allow guys to learn on the job. Right or wrong, now I think they've gone in a different direction, but we can talk about that a different day.
Okay, but to your point, you're absolutely right. But it is right in that moment. You're actually going to go out and maybe get some veteran players to fill it in because you're ready there. Where it becomes wrong is when you maybe hang on too long to some of that, and then you're starting to block. Like, you go through and you look at different players that have, you move a guy along. Okay, let's take this one. As hard as it was to see, okay, moving Ryan O'Reilly along, right? That one still stinks, if I'm being honest, in terms of that, because I know that guy can still flat out play. Robert Thomas, with a veteran coach, doesn't get the opportunities he had last year to grow into the role that he's growing into if Ryan O'Reilly is here. So because Doug Armstrong turned the page and just said we're going to bite the bullet and try to prevent what San Jose is going through, Buffalo, all those long playoff droughts, that was one of those situations. And look at what happened with Robert Thomas there. I mean,
sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, right?
And
there are other
if you're talent evaluating, then the key that comes back down to is talent evaluation.
No doubt.
And you're going to miss on some of them, right? The Blues just haven't missed on many. And so, look, I think give it till the middle of November. Ken Hitchcock always believed this. It takes you 25 games in, you're going to know the personality of your team. Right now, there's a lot of hope and a lot of expectations. And I'll tell you this, don't suggest to anybody right now, coaches, players, that you're in a retool or rebuild. They don't want any part of it. And they've actually said that to us. Like, they don't want to hear it because they have high expectations on themselves. That alone, I think, gives you reason to be optimistic.
Well, that's interesting that you said that, because in the past, I don't think we've kind of had a clear picture of what the personality of the team was supposed to be. It felt like it was a lot of speed, a lot of rush hockey. Do you feel like the personality is different this year now with different players and personalities?
Well, I think you're going to see with camp the amount of competition that there is for spots. I mean, guys, there's young players that thought, okay, I've made it to the NHL that are probably going to go to the minors. There might be a veteran or two that finds themselves on waivers. I guarantee you, it has to happen. There's a handful of guys on one-way contracts that are going to be on a waiver wire, whether it be a younger guy that's on a or something, okay? I say that because the personality is going to start with how Drew Bannister opens up camp. Drew Bannister knows that this team has to become more of that down-low puck possession team. So I'm actually looking for Drew Bannister to have an impact that Craig Berube had when he first took over. And by the way, the same impact that Mike Yeo had when he took over for Ken Hitchcock. If you go back and you watch the first practices of all three guys, the first week of they all did the same thing. Next thing you know, the Nets are being down in the corner, battle drills. They're looking for speed and size. Doug Armstrong addressed that this offseason. And then puck handling and controllability in that offensive zone. The Blues know, and Drew Bannister has said this to us all throughout last year, using the Vancouver Canucks as an example, they know the style of play that they need. I think the personality will come out of that. I also think that I don't know that they've added anybody, they haven't added anybody like a Ryan Reeves or something where you're going to go, okay, that's the fisticuffs jam. But I think they've added a little bit of moxie with the size here. Now, I haven't seen it on the ice yet. We'll see. Right. Sure. But I think they've added just a little bit of...
You've added some guys that are not afraid to push back, too.
Yeah, listen, Reddick Foxa, guys, is an absolute dog on the bone defensively, and he won't take, he's he won't take stuff off. I had to figure out how I wanted to phrase that. Okay, but
I was wondering where we were going. I was like, you're a
there.
broadcaster, man. You know how this works.
I was thinking my daughter's favorite movie is Cool Runnings, where Junior Bevel's looking in the mirror and I don't take notes, Reddick Fox is one that if you jam him, he's going to jam you back.
Matthew Joseph's that way, too. That's what he did in Tampa.
That's exactly right. So I think they've added that, and I think that was two things that they needed to address was that aspect on the ice and just a culture aspect of what they're doing in the room, and I think they've done it.
And I think when people hear you say that, Curbs, the culture side of things, they immediately go to, there's not enough leadership. There's not enough leadership. You could correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not sure that's entirely what it is. No. I think it can also be some personality of, lightening up the room. Having guys we saw Matthew and P.O. Joseph, the brothers today. They came in, and the moment that they walked through the door, it felt lighter in the room. They were joking with each other, giving each other crap, and it wasn't just like a brotherly thing. You could tell that's also just who they are as people. You need that. And it can't just be one guy that you bring in. You're like, this is our personality hire. No, you've got to have multiple guys that are bringing that on a
And you have to develop it over some time. You hear Robert Thomas in his interview with Jeremy Rutherford talk about, the impact that Bozak had on him. Mm-hmm. And how Tyler Bozak had this lighter aspect. David Perron was a very vocal guy. Yep. There's different ways of being vocal and how you do it. And I agree with you 100%. The other thing that actually plays a role in that, and that'll be how does the team start the year?
Yeah.
The pressure of the last couple of years, the pressure of a veteran group saying we're still in a window, bringing in young guys that don't know even what a window is in that sense, and it doesn't necessarily gel because sometimes the young guys may not look like they're as serious as the other guys, but you saw this a lot last year. All those young guys with Neighbors and Hofer especially with his personality, they were staying on the ice together. At one point, some veteran players had to say, guys, you got to come off the ice. We got to go get on the bus. Yeah. Things along those kind of lines. Losing, you notice how we very rarely talk about culture and leadership when teams are winning, and it always comes out when you're losing. It's probably never the extremes in either situation. To your point, BK, it's in the middle there. But I think the winning, the changing of a coach last year, all that stuff. The struggles defensively with a veteran defensive core, things like that, really weighed on guys. And you're a young guy, you don't know what to say. Veteran guys are putting pressure on themselves. I can tell you this. Anybody that thinks that a pro athlete doesn't want to win is out of their mind, okay? It just sometimes obviously doesn't go that way. So but a little lighter, some youthful energy, opportunity, is huge for these guys. And then the start is big. Guys, this is we'll have plenty of time to talk into as we get going here, but I think the travel schedule is a difficult one. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of downtime on the road.
Curbs.
There's things that at the beginning of the year, if you go look at the schedule, the first half of this year up to the Winter Classic, you have got to be road warriors to have a good, successful season.
That's where you build your chemistry.
It's where you can build your chemistry. So this isn't what, obviously you take care of business at home, but if you go look at the road trips and the schedule and the type of schedule you're playing, it's the uncontrollable. Everybody has tough schedules in some ways, right?
Yes.
You have your road play early on in this season can really dictate how your season can start.
Curbs, we're looking forward to these each and every Wednesday. We're going to catch up with our guy, Chris Kerber. He's the voice of the Blues. You'll hear him right here on your home of the Blues 101 ESPN throughout the season, of course. Good to be back. Good to be back out here at Centene Community Ice Center. We'll talk with you again next week, Curbs.
All right, guys. Have an awesome week.
Same to you. That's Chris Kerber, voice of the Blues, joining us as he does each and every Wednesday throughout the Blues season here on BK and Ferrario. Coming up next, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. It is time for questions and answers here on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario with you, along with Tracy Bibb, who I know is just as excited as I am that hockey season is ramping up. And Tracy, let's talk insurance, because you and I have discussed about how you and your team are making sure that both Missouri and Illinois drivers are being taken care of when other insurance agencies aren't taking care of them.
Yeah, and we actually just got a brand new auto product in Missouri, so we have it now in Illinois and Missouri. We've been looking at a lot of clients, new to us, people's insurance that has totally been saving them some money. It's been really good. Also, if you have had a claim recently, you may be seeing from your home insurance company that they might be non-renewing you or their rates are going up. That is a perfect time to give us a call. We don't rate that harshly against claims, and if you've had a new roof, it'll actually probably get better for you. So perfect time to call us right now.
Give Tracy and her team a call today. Free, non-committal quote. Super simple. 314-328-4260. Again, 314-328-4260. It's no fib. You're always in great hands with the Bib. Tracy, thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Go Blues.
You've got questions, we may have the answers. Maybe. It's BK and Ferrario's Questions and Answers.
Presented by Window World St. Louis.com. Simply the best for less.
All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service X line for questions and answers. You can check us out on YouTube as well. Get your questions in over there on the Graveyard Chat. YouTube.com/101ESPN STL is the place where you can go. And by the way, while you're over there, just hit that subscribe button. Makes it super easy for you to be able to see us each and every day. You get on there, hit the subscribe. You can just go to your YouTube, whether it's on your app, on your phone, or at home, whatever it might be. It makes it super simple for you to be able to watch us anytime you
Smash that like button, eh, T-Bone?
Do that too, actually. Yeah, that'd be great.
Oh, the tongue emoji. Let's see it. Get it out there. Come on, guys. Put it on the Graveyard. Tongue emojis.
All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service X line. From the 314, guys, which college football game this weekend do you think has the chance to be the best?
Illinois versus Nebraska, am I right?
It actually is a fun one.
24-22, T-Bone?
I think they're going to get killed.
We'll be watching
Nebraska.
We're out at Blues and Brews. I'll have it on my phone for you.
No,
Right?
man, you and I need to stay separated at Blues and Brews. You know?
We hang out last year and had a good
we?
time.
I guess we did, didn't we?
Yeah,
I'm bringing my
we got
baby.
To see, little baby.
I'm bringing my baby this time.
I'm bringing my 1-year-old.
I thought about bringing all 3 of them, and then it's just a perfect excuse to be like, "Hey, here are my kids."
Last year we could hold him basically the whole time. That doesn't
work anymore.
No.
Oh well, you'll be envious of ours because I'm bringing mine that we literally hold the whole time.
All right, you got USC versus Michigan. You've got Tennessee versus Oklahoma.
I think that's going to be a blowout.
Illinois versus Nebraska. Those are probably
I like Utah, Oklahoma State.
Biggest games. Utah, Oklahoma State is
that
interesting.
Might be fun.
Is Cam Rising expected to play this weekend?
I've not seen anything on his availability.
I honestly, I know I was joking. Illinois, Nebraska might be the one that I'm going to be most locked into.
I'm legitimately curious to see what Tennessee looks like against a real opponent in Oklahoma. I don't think, we talked about this yesterday. I think they could finish with 5 or 6 losses this year, but they'll be a top 25-ish caliber team just because how difficult their schedule is.
It's in Oklahoma too, so.
If Tennessee goes in there and wins by 14, we're going to have to reassess where we're at with them, and it might just be that Tennessee's awesome this season, and they have a real quarterback to run that system that Josh Heupel is able to put out there.
I'm most intrigued by the USC-Michigan game because it's so different stylistically. You know, you think USC, you still think kind of that Pac-12, no defense, we're going to sling the ball around the football field. Meanwhile, Michigan is here to punch you in the face, run the ball down your throat. I'm interested to see just how it looks.
Too, so it's going to be all running for Michigan this weekend.
I'm fascinated to know how, just stylistically, how that game plays out because I think USC is a better football team. But I don't know how they're going to handle this style of play from the Michigan Wolverines.
All right, from the 314, guys, how did you come up with the name Graveyard for your chat? Very simple.
They make me want to die every time I read it.
Well, that is one interpretation. Very early on in our chat, it was very dead over there. There were not a lot of people chatting.
Oh, okay, so we were close.
Just quiet. So it was the Graveyard. It was dead.
Sad.
Technically, I should call the text line Graveyard too because they make me feel sad also when I read it.
The text line is very active.
Maybe we should call the YouTube chat the happy place.
I mean, the YouTube chat doesn't make me...
It's a good place. Yeah, there we go.
The YouTube chat doesn't make me feel as awful of a broadcaster as the text line does after every show.
They were making fun of my polos the other day, so they make me feel a little worse.
They were making sure you're paying fun of
dude, I go back at the end of the show. I put the timestamps in if you watch the show after. And I see, the chat when I'm going through, and all of a sudden I just having to look down. It's like, where'd he get that shirt from? And I don't remember where it was.
What's wrong with wearing a polo, man?
I don't know. They were being critical of my polo selection.
To be fair.
Oh, Here we go.
What's wrong with the polos?
I say this with all due respect.
Oh, here comes flannel.
No, listen, I rock flannel. I am pure Old Navy Banana Republic. That's
90 degrees outside. He's wearing 2 layers.
We have ice 50 feet away from us currently.
Yeah, but it's hot in this room.
It is consistently 55 degrees in this room.
Yeah, you can't go in the bathroom.
T-Bone could easily be the model for Coles. Cole's Cash is T-Bone and Kirk Cousins.
They wouldn't even say that in the chat. I don't remember what the place was that they said. Navy, maybe.
Old Navy?
Old Navy, yeah. I think that's what they said.
There's nothing wrong with Old Navy.
There's nothing wrong with Coles.
I had a kid, and I was like, I don't shop at Banana Republic anymore. I exclusively shop at Old Navy now.
I shop at consignment shops for kids. Are you kidding me?
I can believe, because I typically am with you. The Graveyard should be more of the happy place. But just the other day, I go through and just randomly I look down, and there they are. There was 10 people going back and forth about the polo game.
Well, they make fun of my girl dad hat all the time.
You know what? Graveyard fits.
All right. Last question for you guys. Which of these 0-2 teams that we previously thought could be a contender is most likely to lose again this weekend, okay? The Colts, they take on the Bears. They are at home. The Colts are a 1-point favorite at home this weekend as an 0-2 team. Do you want to go with the Baltimore Ravens, who are on the road at the Cowboys? The Ravens are shockingly, in my opinion, a 1.5-point road favorite at the Cowboys this weekend. Ravens coming into this one 0-2. Another team, the Jaguars, on the road against the Bills. Bills a 5-point favorite, and then the Bengals are at home against the Commanders. Bengals are a 7.5-point favorite in that one. Both of those last 2 games are Monday night. Most likely to lose out of that group that we just mentioned.
I mean, I think it's the Jaguars or the Colts. I'll say the Colts, though, because I don't know if your YOLO offense is going to work with that Chicago defense. I don't think Caleb Williams is going to be great. I think that's going to be in the under type of game, but Anthony Richardson isn't going to be heaving the ball 40, 50 yards downfield against that defense.
Yeah, for me, it's the Ravens. Who's blocking Parsons? Their O-line's terrible. And I know they got blown out last week by the Saints. I think you're going to see a bounce back even from the Cowboys defense. That defense is better than what it showed last week. I think they could potentially blow out the Ravens.
Jaguars. This team's done, dude. Even Trevor Lawrence knows it. He came out at his post-game press conference and said, yeah, man, we suck. I was like, yeah, you do.
I mean, you ain't wrong.
Jaguars on the road Monday night against the Bills.
Maybe it's just me. I never really viewed them as a contender, so to me, they don't even belong in this conversation.
That's fair. I think they're in that category with the Colts. Yeah. I think people had more excitement for the Jags than the Colts. I was on my own island with the Colts, and that has not gone well.
It's still a fun YOLO jersey game, right?
Coming up in 15 minutes, we're going to get into a game of more likely to happen. You guys give us 2 scenarios. We'll tell you which one is more likely at 12:15. But coming up next, Jordan Walker. We're starting to see an increase in the production. Are you buying it? Does it give you optimism for 2025? We'll give you our answers to that next here on 101 ESPN.
Wall-to-wall Blues coverage is right here. 101 ESPN is live from the Centene Community Ice Center. Brought to you by Bud Light and E&B Granite. Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
Swing and a drive. That ball is vaporized to left. Jordan Walker, number 4 on the season. All 4 of them have come in the month of September.
All right, Jordan Walker, that is the kind of production that we were looking for from you. With Alex and T-Bone on BK, Grant Francis back in the studio for us today. We are broadcasting live at the E&B Granite Studios out of the Centene Community Ice Center. That audio courtesy of Valley Sports Midwest last night is Jordan Walker, 4th home run on the season. All have come in the month of September. Alex, since his return on August 30th, he's got an OPS of 810. If you want to get it even closer, you just want to look at his September numbers. He's batting .273. He's slugging .591. He has an OPS over 900 in the month of September. Yes, it's a small sample size. I understand that. I'm not trying to make this something more than what it is.
But it's wild what happens when you play a guy consistently.
Since his return, he's hit the ball hard, which is 95-plus miles per hour, on 13 of his 33 batted balls. That's roughly in line with what he had last year in terms of his hard hit rate. He does look a little bit more comfortable. Now, it's not perfect. He's still chasing too often, in my opinion. And he still is on the ground too often from what you'd like to see out of a legitimate, like, top 5 guy in your order. But, Alex, there's production that is starting to match the excitement that surrounded Jordan Walker coming into this season for the first time really all year long. Is this encouraging you? Is this giving you confidence as to what Jordan Walker could be for the Cardinals in 2025?
Yeah, it is, because production also means confidence, and the more confidence you have, the better you're going to be at this level. It's why it was so frustrating in August when they brought him up and told him you're a platoon bat and you're only playing certain times. How are you supposed to build any consistency or confidence when you're coming in and out of the lineup because the manager doesn't trust you against one type of pitcher? I think what you're seeing from Jordan Walker should give you confidence. Now, look, even with those numbers, and it is a small sample size, that doesn't scream franchise-altering player, superstar in the making. It does scream a guy that you still have a lot of hopium living off of with Jordan Walker. But, man, these are building blocks right now when you're talking about a 21-year-old who, for the start of the season, was so bad that they said, man, you got to go figure your ish out down in the minors, and you didn't see him again until August. So it provides me a little bit more of optimism for next season. I think it's optimism that I also understand it's going to be a slow process. This isn't going to be you open up next year and all of a sudden you found your everyday 3-hole hitter. I think you're going to have to be okay with the slow process of Jordan Walker. But if anything you should be like putting stock into, it's the fact that you've played 14 games where you've been in there every single day and you've seen improvements from game to game.
Yeah, I think the one thing that I will take away from that is on the positive side is that he is doing damage now. You know, he still has a hole in his swing. Like, it's clear he still is chasing after that slider low and away. The nice thing is now is when pitchers make mistakes, he makes them pay.
Yep.
Like you take back the home run in Toronto in that series. Fastball, middle of the zone, what's Walker do? He sends it into the bleachers. That's what you want him to do at this point in his career. You know, once he starts to learn to lay off that slider away, now you will start to see him really take that next step. I will say, he almost looks more Gorman-esque at the plate right now, which is a little alarming for me. But again, I'm not going to take too much stock into it. It's the final month of the season. I just like that he's up here working on things at the big league level. But he is striking out at a high rate, almost right at the rate where Nolan Gorman was. Really? And he's only walking at 2%. He's got 2 walks in 55 plate appearances since getting recalled. And it's not like that wasn't a part of his game last year. You look at 2023, he drew a decent amount of walks. He was at 11% last year at the big league level. And his strikeout rate was kind of high, 31%. But it wasn't as high as it's been since he's been recalled. So that's one thing that is a little alarming for me, but I don't mind it because he's doing damage, and I just want him up here working on things. And my hope is that being up here leads to where he can cut that strikeout rate down just a little bit and get that walk rate back up when he comes back next season.
A lot of those strikeouts came in those first couple of games that he was up. He had 2 against the Yankees in that first one, 2 out of 4 at-bats, and then 3 out of 4 at-bats were strikeouts in the second Yankees game. You can't say that aside. Like, that happened. That's real, and it does matter. But in September, he's 14 strikeouts in 47 plate appearances. That's not so bad. That's fine. You can live with that. That's basically 1 out of every, 3.5. So you're, still upper 20s, lower 30%. But that's doable. You can live with that. It's the damage that he has to continue doing. A couple of doubles, 4 home runs in this month of September. That's the damage that you're looking for from a guy like Jordan Walker. Now, if he can become more consistent and selective, now you're talking about a real, not just contributor, but a guy that can, bat in the top 5 in the order next year, and you feel good about building around him. It gives me some confidence that can happen for Walker. It's just, there are still nights where you watch it and you're like, man, I don't know if he's all the way there. In fact, I don't think he's all the way there yet. And so it's nice to see, hey, he's not all the way there yet, and he's still doing damage, and he's getting all this slug, and that's great. There will come a point in time, though, where he goes through another slump, and I'm just going to be really curious to see how the team reacts to it the next time that happens. Not this year, but next year. When he goes through that big slump, is it we're sending him back down? Is it we're pulling him out of the lineup? What is the reaction going to be then? Because I think next year is the time where you do just have to live with it, and you eat it, and you say, we're going to have you out there every day. Just keep working.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. Could you blame him for not being all the way there yet?
No,
I mean, for how this, but also for how the season has gone. And I mean, even look now, like we're talking about a guy who has been playing every single game, which is great. You're getting some production from it, but it's also a guy that's getting pulled out of games late because you don't believe he's good defensively. Like, I don't know if I could blame Jordan Walker for not being there because there have been so many mixed messages to him this season of who you're supposed to be. In August, you're a platoon bat. And then you come up and, no, you're an everyday bat. But, no, you're not going to play defense. But we sent you down to work on your defense, but your offense wasn't going. We don't want you to be on the ground. Like, there have been so many messages to a Jordan Walker right now that I'm not sure if I'm him, I'm all the way there yet. I think there might be a little bit of struggle to mentally be there because of everything that this guy has gone through in terms of the front office mindset of what they want from him, the management mindset of what they want from him, and frankly, what he's been going through.
He's been pulled in 6 games since his return. 6 out of, I think it's 14. Yeah. 6 out of 13 starts for late inning replacement defensively. How do you guys feel about that? We talked about it briefly yesterday. You guys know it's something that kind of gets stuck in my craw, but what are your guys' thoughts on them doing that at this point? I know they want to win these games, but they did it in a 4-0 game against the Pirates the other night.
Yeah, T-Bone and I had the same thought.
I don't like it, and it is a frustrating thing because I agree with your sentiment of how are you going to get better in the field if you're not getting the reps? And I know what the argument is from the Cardinals is, well, we want him getting the reps off of the field. It's different. It's different from practice.
Just like Victor Scott, right?
I actually think their retort would be, well, he's getting 7 innings of reps.
Yeah.
Why are the
and
next
the 2 innings don't
innings?
matter?
Aren't those the most important innings of a game?
Well, yeah, there's pressure that's involved in that, but also they're mounting, right? I mean, you said how many games recently?
7. So that's 15, basically.
Yeah, that's potentially,
it's basically 2 games.
Yeah, that right there. That's 2 games worth potentially of him working in the field in high leverage spots, which he's going to have to do if he's going to be a big leaguer. I don't know. Maybe this is too far of a stretch. Maybe this is a bit of a hot take. When I see this, and again, this was the same message a year ago. If you think back to last September, they were doing this, and then they quit. They finally said, oh, no, he's good enough defensively. He's going to be out there in these late game situations. Well, did he get worse defensively this year? In my opinion, he's been better defensively, and this is where I come to the point of the Oli Marmol and Jordan Walker kind of, I don't want to call it relationship because I'm not in the room with those guys, but just the vibe away from the team with those two feels very Kyrou Berube-esque.
Yeah, the dynamic of those two.
It's hard and let's be clear, you're talking about how they are handled on the fields, not necessarily how they approach each other off the field.
Because we haven't seen
that I think was actually an issue potentially with Berube and Kyrou. I don't believe that to be the case.
That'll only happen when one of them speak when they're with another team and they say, well, what are your thoughts? And he's not my coach anymore.
We haven't seen that side of it, but it does feel like it's not clicking together as a group in terms of the best way to handle him and develop him from the Oli Marmol perspective. And that's tough to say because I think Berube did a good job with Kyrou, but they were never on the same page of how he wanted himself to play.
It felt like there was frustration towards each other in terms of how they were being utilized as a player.
Agreed.
And that frustration boiled over into the actual performance on the field or on the ice.
Yeah.
T-Bone and I had the same thought process.
And I don't really know what to make of it because this is something that there are real signs of, for me, frustration about the way that they're trying to develop this player at the major league level. And the Cardinals will then say, well, the major leagues aren't for development. Well, they are right now.
They are when you're a bad team.
That's what this is supposed to be. And I think what they would say to you, Alex, is we're not a bad team. We're a game above 500. But, I know what the Cardinals would tell me in these spots. If I was trying to have this conversation with them, I could just have it as an internal monologue right now. I would say, why are you doing this with Jordan Walker? And they would say, because we're trying to win these baseball games. And I would say, well, what's the point of that? And they would say, well, you don't think that Nolan Arenado cares about winning these games? You don't think that Lance Lynn cared last night? Kyle Gibson cares? Paul Goldschmidt cares, etc.? And I would say, well, of course they do, but you can't highlight that at the expense of the development of the young players. And then they would say, well, they're getting the 7 innings, and then the last inning or 2 is for go time. It's for us to be able to close that game out after he's had the first 7 innings for his development, for the at-bats, for the defensive work. And so, like, there is this natural back and forth, and it eventually becomes a place of, like, okay, if that's how you're going to approach it now, when you're out of it, and the team is 1 game above 500, and you've played 151 of these things, how are you going to approach it next April when you are definitely trying to win those games? Because at that point, nobody's out of it.
Yeah.
So how can I trust then that you will approach it from the perspective that will best develop this talent at the big league level, which, yes, is going to be necessary for you next season, when I'm watching it happen right now in September and it's not necessarily happening? That is the question that I have, and I don't think there's an obvious or clear answer to that just yet. And until we get one, I don't really know how to evaluate it.
But my pushback with that, if the Cardinals were saying that, is, yes, I know that the wins matter to Arenado and Goldschmidt for now, but what matters more to them, winning this game tonight or being another 500 team next season? And then on top of Major League level isn't for development purposes. Cool. Milwaukee Brewers were competing, and they just stuck with the development of Jackson Churios all season.
There was not pressure to get him out of the lineup.
I get it.
Other guys were producing.
But you can also say that they're a 500 team or 1 game above 500 team, but your offense has been one of the worst in the National League, and you've been running the same guys out there all season.
And let's look at a team that's like actually in it right now, or they've kind of climbed into it. I haven't watched a lot of this team, but I would bet you they're not doing what we're talking about. Detroit's probably not doing that. Detroit's a team that's actually like trying to develop guys on the fly at the big league level, and they're winning, and suddenly you look up and they're kind of back into the playoff race again, where people are like, whoa, look at the Detroit Tigers.
Yeah. They're a game and a half back right now.
Yeah, they're in. They're truly in the playoff. They gave up at the deadline.
Yeah, look at how the Minnesota Twins treated their offseason.
Yeah.
Like, they traded everybody away, and they're like, oh, we'll see what happens. And then they are actually developing and winning.
The tough part for me, and this is why I'm not willing to go quite all the way there, I'm not watching those teams night in and night out. So I don't know. They might be doing something similar right now. I genuinely do not know. The Twins, I don't know how they approach late games. I don't know how they specifically put step by step, brick by brick into the development process of some of their young players. So, like, it might be something else that's frustrating for them, right? Maybe they platoon a guy that they don't want to be platooning right now. I don't know how that's working for some of those young guys, so it's hard for me to be overly critical and in comparison with these other teams. I know what's happening here, though, and I know what's happening with the Cardinals, and I don't like it. I don't like the way that they are approaching this Jordan Walker development curve, and if it was a one-off, it'd be like, man, that's really weird the way they're handling Jordan Walker, but it's not. This is something that we've seen with a lot of their young players that we've all had some questions about, some concerns about the way that they're developing them at the big league level. All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line with Alex and T-Bone. I'm BK. More likely to happen is next here on BK and Ferrario.
likely to happen? They'll figure it out. BK and Ferrario's most likely to happen.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for more likely to happen. You guys give us two scenarios. We'll tell you which one is more likely here on BK and Ferrario. Alex, let's start out with this one. More likely to score 25 goals for the Blues this year.
Jerk.
What?
I was going to do one on scoring goals, but go ahead.
Dylan Holloway or Braden Shen?
I'll say Braden Shen. I think Holloway could get you 15. I think Shen could score 20 to 25.
Okay.
Shen's always around that area. He's kind of like Brandon Saad. Even when he's bad, he's still going to score you 20 goals. I'm not
what did he finish with last
20, I think.
I think he's right
20 or 21. I'm not putting those type of lofty expectations on Dylan Holloway right away because I don't know where he's going to play. I don't know if he's going to be on the center. I don't know if he's going to be wing, third line, fourth line, second line, second power play unit, if he's going to get any power play time. I do think 15 goals is reachable because he will play 82 games in the NHL this season.
Before you answer, T-Bone, just in the last 6 seasons for Braden Shen, he has reached the 25-goal threshold once, and it was exactly 25 goals. Now, there's some caveats in there, like he had a shortened season a couple of times in there, so it's worth noting. But 20 goals last year, only 25 goals once since his first season in St. Louis. T-Bone, who do you think is more likely to get to 25 this year, Braden Shen or Big D Dylan Holloway?
Big D!
I'm definitely going Braden Shen because I've seen him do it once.
I would as well.
I want to see it on the ice from Holloway, and I agree with that because I think it'd be unfair to have that kind of expectation for Dylan Holloway. My expectation is, like, can you get like 10 to 15? So I just don't see it in the range of outcomes for Holloway, at least this season.
If he does 15 this year, I would say in a cup, either next year or the year prior, I could see him being a 25-goal scorer.
Alex, what do you got for us?
All right, since you went with that one, I'm going to go this one. More likely to happen. Ryan Suter finishes the entire season with the Blues. Matt Kessel finishes the entire season with the Blues.
Kessel. There's no reason not to have Kessel up here the entire season. I mean,
Now, mind you, he has a two-way contract. He is waiver ineligible.
You have
Waiver
to
exempt,
see.
yeah.
Thank you.
He's not waivers exempt. You would have to see him really fail spectacularly this year because there's a spot on the right side, third pair defenseman, that he fits into perfectly. And he's a young player, and he's developing at the NHL level, and they've got to know going in exactly what they signed up for there. So, yeah, he's probably going to have some growing pains this season, but I would be really disappointed, barring something unforeseen, if he is not a part of the roster at the beginning of the season and at the end, barring injury as well.
Yeah, I think I would say it's more likely that we see Suter here the rest of the year.
Wow.
I think Kessel, they sent Kessel down at one point last year. I think
they realized that was a mistake.
Hopefully.
I realized it was a mistake.
I also think it's possible they trade Ryan Suter by the deadline.
Maybe. I could see
Depending on how he's playing.
you have a year where Kessel doesn't end up, playing to the level we saw last year, and they look at it and go, oh, maybe it was one of those where it could be a one-hit wonder. Maybe we need to send him down and we keep a Ryan Suter around that's a veteran that can be on our blue line. And if they're competing too, by the way, odds are you're going to see them lean more towards a veteran than they are a young guy.
I'm just going to throw it out there because it's just kind of me speculating. I don't know anything about this. If they want Scott Perunovich in the lineup, I could see them using Scott Perunovich on his offhand as the sixth defenseman.
Yeah, I could see that as well. Guys, more likely to fall out of the top 10 in college football. Tennessee or Ole Miss? Or Mizzou. I'll throw them in there too.
Like
three.
At the end of the season or right?
Yeah, more likely to fall out of the top 10 by the end of the season of those three teams. Ole Miss, Tennessee, or Mizzou?
I think I would go Tennessee just because of the schedule. So they've got Oklahoma this weekend, and that's on the road. They also have to play against Alabama and Georgia, and that Georgia game is on the road. They could lose those two games against Bama and Georgia this year and be like 11th. Still get into the college football playoff, but finish 11th in the in the rankings. So I would go Tennessee simply because of the schedule. Mizzou and Ole Miss both have like one of those games that Tennessee has two of this year.
That's where I'm at as well, because I think just looking at Ole Miss's schedule, like they got tough games, but you've only got Georgia. To whereas if you're Tennessee and you got Alabama and Georgia, they might be suffering from those two losses.
Yeah,
so I'll say
they've
Tennessee.
all got Oklahoma, and then for Mizzou, it's like at Texas A&M, and then the home game, or they've got the Alabama game as well. For Ole Miss, their version of that is Oklahoma, because everybody plays Oklahoma this year that's any good, and then LSU and Georgia. So I think if you were ranking the most difficult slate to get to the top 10 by the end of the season, it would be Tennessee's most difficult, then Ole Miss, then the University of Missouri.
I would go Tennessee as well, just because when I see an explosive offense like theirs, they haven't played anybody that's good defensively. I know Georgia's going to be able to schematically match up with them. I know Bama's going to have something up their sleeve. I know Brent Venable of the Oklahoma Sooners. I don't think he's a great head coach. I definitely know he can game plan for a good offense and slow it down. So I'm with you guys. I think it's Tennessee.
All right, let's get to these from the text line. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. More likely to happen, the Cardinals bring back Lance Lynn and Fetty, or they bring back Goldie and Gorman next year. Lynn and Fetty versus Gorman and Goldie, Alex.
Oh, more likely they bring back Goldie and Gorman. I don't see them moving Gorman because I got to imagine the Cardinals are like, oh, man, we love the home run power, even though like this entire team has just been striking out like crazy, and that just adds to it. But I'm more convinced that Paul Goldschmidt's going to be back than I'm convinced Lance Lynn would be back.
Yeah, that's where I am. I'm now starting to get convinced that they're going to somehow convince themselves of Paul Goldschmidt. So I'll agree with Alex. I think it's more likely to see Goldie and Gorman back. I think it's easy for them to get away from the Lynn deal, and it'll be easy for them if they also are trying to bring back Goldie and save on payroll. It's easy to move in Eric Fetty. He's only making like $7 million. Somebody would like to have him in their rotation.
Sweep it. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. More likely to happen, Bolduc or Dvorsky make the Blues roster on opening night, Alex?
Man, this one's tough. I would have to go with Bolduc, but I think the path to making a roster is easier for Dvorsky because things line out so much easier for this Blues team if Dvorsky's on it. But I also don't think they want to break Dvorsky. So I'll say Bolduc because he's got the NHL experience. He's going to have more confidence going through training camp. He's just going to have to outplay a lot of dudes when it comes to the competition.
Yeah, I lean towards Dvorsky because of what you said. To me, it's the path of quote-unquote least resistance. It's easier for him, in my opinion, to make the team. If you don't like Booch at center, and if you think it's better for Braden Shen to whether be center of the third line or be on a wing to stay healthy all year, I can see where Dvorsky has a good camp and he makes it. Bolduc, to me, can have a great camp, and I still don't know how he makes this roster.
Yeah, the only way I see Bolduc making it is that's where you put a captain on waivers and you say we're going to keep Bolduc up here and he's going to be the guy that's playing and we keep like a Sundqvist on the outside. But the Dvorsky thing, they could do the Robert Thomas route. If you feel like he's NHL ready to where you think his game can play, you can use him on the wing for a little bit and keep him with the centerman and then kind of grow him towards the end of the season with center. I just personally think it's going to be better for them to keep him in the AHL and be the centerman.
I'm going Bolduc on this. I think it's more likely that Bolduc ends up making the opening night roster because you just drop Alexei Toropchenko down to the fourth line, man. That's it. Everything else, as is. You don't really have to change anything else to your lineup, and you just have him as a middle six forward. Now, I've heard of the top six comments from Doug Armstrong about, hey, he's got to make the top six or he's not going to be here. I don't know that I really care about like top six specific. It's middle six. Yeah. You can't be on the fourth line.
I think you're going to be top nine.
There's no reason for him to be used on the fourth line. But like at this point, with the way that teams utilize their top three lines in the NHL, it's all like one and the same, right? You're going to get a decent amount of playing time whether you're on the second line or the third line. You got to roll all four lines.
The wild part is like Toropchenko's already on my fourth line, like because I have Texier higher up because I think there's more offensive upside there. But I mean, regardless. Even then, you still are talking about a Matthew Joseph and a Toropchenko on the fourth line, which might be more along their lines. I think Texier and Bolduc are so similar types of players because both have offense, both are shoot-first mentality, and it's going to come down to, okay, we've got a lot more controllable years with the Zach Bolduc, and we need him to be a top six winger. I think they already know what Texier is. And if there's more, great. If not, we want you to be a third-line winger.
Yeah, a lot of this comes down to Sonny's health as well. If he's
absolutely
ready to go on opening night, that it becomes that much more difficult for any of these guys that we're talking about to crack the lineup. All right, last thing here. Guys, more likely to happen, BK becomes a man of integrity, or Tanner gets a date.
No, T-Bone gets a date. It's not even close. You know, I'm out there swiping. Swiper is swiping, so I
don't make a Dora reference if you're trying to get a date, man.
That was a choice.
Yeah,
that was a choice.
I'll say T-Bone gets a date. BK integrity. No.
I think BK's got a pretty good amount of integrity.
Thanks, man.
No,
that's the nicest thing you've ever said to me.
Look, man. I mean, I'm not gonna discredit your integrity. There's more things that I will discredit. T-Bone, I'm just not sure, man. You keep swiping, but the problem is nobody's trying to take anything.
I don't believe him.
Well, that's true, too. I also don't believe
I don't believe that he's actually swiping. I don't think T-Bone's putting in the work.
Look, man, I've seen my cousin's Tinder game, and that man just sits on a couch at my house when we're having a barbecue, just swipe.
T-Bone could get a date as if he wanted to. He absolutely could.
Look at that face he's giving you right now.
Because he knows I'm right.
No, he's wrong.
He's not putting in the work. You got to be over here swiping, and it better be a lot of swipes to the right. Because eventually you're going to get that match, and then you got to put in the work to say, "Hey, how you doing? You up?"
I think
let's send the text, man.
Yeah, but see, if T-Bone sends you up and they respond with yes, T-Bone's not leaving his apartment. T-Bone's like, "No, I'm good here. I'm comfortable here. We'll meet next time."
That's true. He's got the map of the
Netflix
world
and chill
behind him.
here.
Yeah,
You know?
T-Bone, you just got to have the non-Beyonce mindset. Just no more to the left.
T-Bone's got to get his game going.
I didn't
So
get
the
that
correct
reference, but
answer
it
here
sounded good.
is. The correct answer here is I'm a man of integrity.
Okay, see the way you said that? Now I take it back. Take it back, man. Nobody says I'm a man of integrity.
Take the credit, pass the blame.
Yeah.
I'm a man of integrity.
Yeah, we know.
Coming up next is Tennessee showing us the way of the future for college teams. And if so, how are you going to feel about this if your team decides to follow suit? We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN.
Grant Francis here with a SportsCenter update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Lance Lynn and the Cardinals picked up the win last night as Lynn went 6 innings and only allowed 4 hits and 1 earned run against. And Jordan Walker hit the go-ahead home run in the 4th inning, his 4th home run of the season and of the month as the Cardinals won over the Pirates 3-1. They're back above 500, 76 and 75 on the season, and they'll look to give themselves a chance to sweep the Pirates tomorrow as they're back tonight at Busch Stadium against the Buccos in Game 3 of 4 of that series. It'll be Sonny Gray efforting for the Cardinals tonight. First pitch will be at 6:45. And a little bit of news earlier today from Katie Wu, who tweeted this out. Expect Michael McGreevy to join the Cardinals active roster today. And tonight here on 101 ESPN, you will have some late baseball here on 101 ESPN. It'll be a Mariners and Yankees, and that pregame will start at 8 o'clock. I'm Grant Francis. The SportsCenter update's been brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
With Alex and T-Bone on BK. Alex, there's a really interesting thing that Tennessee is doing right now. I'm reading right now from ESPN.com's piece about them adding 10% in terms of a service fee, essentially, for NIL money toward the team. They got this quote from Danny White, the athletic director of the University of Tennessee. Quote, "We have a lot of demand. People are excited about the resurgence that Josh Heupel has been able to lead here going into year 4, but we also have a new reality in this world order of college sports. Revenue sharing is going to be a big part of it. That has created some real financial realities, and after talking a lot about it, we said, let's just be transparent with our fans, tell them exactly what it is, and that's why we came up with the concept for a talent fee." Now, last year, Alex, Tennessee led the SEC in home attendance. They have 15 consecutive sellouts of their stadium. They seat more than 100,000 fans. They have sold 70,000 season tickets in each of the past 2 years, and they have a wait list of more than 15,000 fans on that season ticket list.
Perfect way to sneak in that $10.
They're not hurting for people to consume their product. The team's good. They have a stud quarterback that people are getting behind right now. They have a coach that people are buying into. And they sell like crazy when it comes to what their stadium is. They are uniquely positioned to do something like this where they say, hey, 10% increase in ticket prices next year, and it's going to go towards NIL with this quote-unquote talent fee. Alex, do you think this is a Tennessee thing? Or is this something that other schools across the country could end up doing as well?
I mean, I think other schools could end up doing this. Frankly, this is the perfect copycat mentality to where schools are going to look at this and say, like, well, how do we improve our team in our future? Well, we get better players. How do we do that? More money for NIL. How do we get more money for NIL? We start putting some service fees on here for these people that are coming to watch the product. That goes to the NIL. I don't think it's a dumb idea. I'm sure a lot of people are frustrated with it. I think this is probably smart, especially if you're a team that has that dedicated and diehard fan base that is going to be there no matter what. I'm not sure a lot of people in Tennessee are going to be complaining about a 10% fee attached to it because it's going to NIL to keep your team successful. And you know why? Because the team was upfront about it. The college was upfront about, hey, this is what we're doing and why we're doing it. If it just showed up as a 10% service fee, people be a little frustrated about it. It's like when they add the gratuity on to tips at the end of nights for you. But as a fan, and they're telling you what they're doing, probably like, yeah, okay, makes sense. I'll be there.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of it, and that may shock you, but Tennessee football, the program alone, Tennessee football, brought in $75 million in profit in 2023. They're not starving for cash that they've got to add a NIL 10% increase on ticket sales, and they're using the whole, I'm just going to call it baloney of what it is. The excuse of what's coming is revenue sharing with the players. they would be fine even if they didn't do this. I think if you're going to have people pay for the NIL from outside of the university, that should be something that they're willing to donate themselves. That should be something they should be willing to say, you know what, yeah, I will do the 10%. It should almost be, in my opinion, almost an opt-in if you want to do it.
Well,
because if I'm a fan,
opting into buying the ticket.
But if I'm a fan, I don't, like me, for example, I don't necessarily maybe want to put in money towards the NIL fund for Illinois football. I wouldn't want to pay an extra 10% for Illinois football. I'd just watch the game at home. No, not of a 10% increase there.
If the Cardinals said we're at
I think professional sports is different than the college game.
I'll speak for myself. The tickets go up. They just go up. They get more expensive year by year. And why is that? It's not just randomly, although sometimes it does feel that way. Like, it's to keep up with the prices of stuff, right? Like, the team is selling more at supply and demand, but also it's about, hey, what do we need to pay for? And what does that mean? What's our break-even line look like? How do we make sure that we're profitable? So if there is a new reality within college football, and there is, they have to start paying players soon. Like, there's a revenue sharing thing which totally changes the way that these teams allocate their money. And you can't just keep asking fans to provide all of the revenue. Eventually, you're going to have to do something that is different than what it has been in the past. This is a smart way to do it, in my opinion. And, in fact, I'm really impressed that they decided to do this in a way where it was open and honest, and they disclosed exactly why the tickets went up. I think that's the thing that's unique here. Mm-hmm. Teams bump up ticket prices 10% every year. Like, Missouri probably bumped up their ticket prices. I'm not personally a season ticket holder, but I bet you there's people in our listening audience right now that are season ticket holders to Mizzou. I would be curious to hear what their increase was in price year over year. I bet you it was at least 10%. And if they had learned, hey, this is for a talent fee, most of them probably would have said, fine. Some of them might have even been more likely to buy tickets because of the talent fee that's associated with it.
Yeah, because it makes a person feel a part of that team. It makes them feel a part of the university's goal of getting better.
In the way that they can, right?
Yeah.
Because for a lot of people, it's like, man, I don't know how to get involved with NIL. I'm not going to spend thousands of dollars on a year-in, year-out basis to help you go out there and get the talent that you need to acquire. But on my $60 ticket, can I pay an extra $6 toward the NIL fund? Sure, I don't care. What's $6, right?
Yeah.
Like, whatever.
And then when your team wins the SEC championship, you're like, yeah, I did that. I built that team.
If you're at,
better get a freaking ring with it.
If you're at Tennessee and you have 100,000 fans every single Saturday, and you're doing that for 7 Saturdays, man, that's $600,000 extra towards your NIL fund every single Saturday on those $6 ticket fees that you're getting. You times that by 7, dude, we're making a few million bucks off of this over the course of the season.
And now the money that was supposed to be allocated towards the players, now you got a little pot set aside so you don't have to worry about it.
It's honestly kind of brilliant.
Smart business.
It's super smart. So I don't have an issue with it, and I bet you the vast majority of Tennessee fans, if they're being honest, will say, yeah, maybe we're annoyed by it that we get the fee passed along to us, but it's not going to change their mentality in terms of going to the game. T-Bone, I bet you this wouldn't actually change your like if Illinois said
I wouldn't want to donate NIL money to a football program.
It's not a donation though. You're buying a ticket. You have service fees that are associated with Ticketmaster when you go to a concert.
To me, it's the university crime poor is what it is. Oh,
so
we can't when we get to player revenue.
Ticketmaster, like all of these things are associated with the cost of attending a football game, a basketball game, a concert, whatever it is, entertainment wise. This is just what it is, man. This is the new normal for us as we go into these sporting events.
Yeah, I just have a major problem with it because to me it's the university saying we can't pay the players if we don't force a fee on you guys paying into the NIL fund. And to me, the NIL fund should be something that is a voluntary thing, not
this is not just necessarily for the NIL. It's also for the revenue sharing, which is totally different.
And technically, it is voluntary.
NIL fund.
You volunteer if you want to go or not.
Correct.
Yeah, I don't know. I have an issue with it. I agree with Paul Feinbaum. I know Paul Feinbaum called it a disgrace earlier today on ESPN, and I'm with him. I don't think the university should be doing this. I don't think they should be increasing the 10% ticket fee to help their NIL service. Tennessee would be fine.
We don't know that, by the way.
Oh, come on.
I'm serious. We don't. With the revenue sharing, there are hundreds of millions of dollars that are going to be spent on athletes in the foreseeable future that was not spent previously. That's got to come from somewhere, man.
And it's not just football. You're talking about all of the athletics with the university that's getting those revenue sharing.
You have to find that from somewhere. That money is not just magically going to appear when you're in a fan. Like, Alex, you certainly know this as somebody that had kids. Like, that piece of revenue that you have as a family, right, which is your income together.
Yeah.
It was once split between two of you. You now add in one more for us. We've got one more little one at home. It changes the way that I can spend on me and Kara. For Alex, you've got 3 little ones at home. It changes the way that you spend on a month in, month out basis on you and your wife. And now more of that fund is going towards the kids. That's essentially what's happening to college football right now, is that those programs went from not paying anything for the players and all of that going towards the facilities to now we've got to pay towards NIL, towards the facilities, and also the pad, which was free labor, which is what it was. It was free labor for college athletics. We no longer have that ability anymore. Now we have to pay them their quote-unquote fair share, which is like 40% of what the revenue is. So I don't know, man. That money's coming from somewhere, and if it's a 10% talent fee and that's coming off of my ticket, yeah, if it's instead of paying $60, I pay 66, so be it. It's not going to change my way of going about it.
I think I know where you're coming from, T-Bone. Your problem is that they're student athletes and student is first. So NIL is a joke.
No,
they shouldn't be paid.
I don't necessarily care if the athletes get paid in college.
Okay, that's just me then. Okay, cool.
I just think it's the university crying poor. I think they are fine with it. I think they now can profit more off of the ticket sale itself, and just now they don't have to pay as much out of their pocket. They're relying on you to do the job for them, do their dirty work for them. That's my problem with it.
I mean, the dirty work, though, that you're doing is paying $5 extra on your ticket.
T-Bone makes it like it's like an underground drug lord.
Asking you to pay $10,000 for their NIL fund. Like, no, dude, they're asking you to pay a little bit more on your tickets.
That $5 might have been my dinner.
You don't have to buy them.
T-Bone thinks
don't buy. If you don't like it, then don't buy it.
T-Bone thinks
super easy.
T-Bone thinks
I know that's what your stance is, but like, I think what you're saying is going to apply to like nobody in Tennessee.
I bet the text line's
nobody.
with
T-Bone thinks the NIL.
People on the text line that are with you.
T-Bone thinks the NIL is like
solo me out here.
It's like a dirty drug underground network.
I just hate when you get these call them an organization. I mean, that's kind of what they operate as.
Yeah, that's what it is.
To me, it's them crying poor. And I hate that. To me, they're fine. They would be fine.
But you also don't know that.
Well, they won't open their books.
Know that to be true.
They won't open their books. You know why they won't open their books probably? Let me think about it. Because they would be fine,
T-Bone seems mad at the Cardinals, too.
I hate that team, too.
Somebody on the text line said, guys, at some point, Luka or BK is going to have another kid that is going to go to college. If that's the case, what you're saying, are you going to get gouged for another $50,000 to $60,000 per kid to go to college because of that 10% NIL? I'm betting not. Oh, this has nothing to do with kids.
Yeah, that's a good point.
BK is solely going to start putting on a 10% fee to listen to us so that he can add that to Luka's college fund.
Actually smart.
I'm here for it. You want to do that together? Let's enact a 10% upgrade.
That's not what's happening. If they were saying, hey, we're going to add 10% onto the tuition for all the kids that are going here to be a part of the university, I would have a very different stance on that.
Oh, that I would be pissed about.
Like this is 10% to go to the football games that you're already attending. And for most people, like the most expensive ticket you're going to get is what? For normal people that are going to the game, right? Not the VIP stuff that they're probably already donors anyways. Like $110, $120 per game. So we're talking about $10 to $12 per week. So we're talking about over the course of the entire season, less than $100 that you're asking for. I mean, yeah, come on. Let's not be ridiculous here. All right, coming up next.
Man of integrity, ladies and gentlemen.
We're diving into the junk drawer. We've got 2 college coaches that had all-time quotes yesterday. I'll let Alex hear both of them next here on 101 ESPN.
BK and Ferrario.
Brought to you by Fenton Bar and Grill. Best trashed wings in Missouri. Dine in, carry out, 7 days a week.
All right, Alex, college coaches, a lot of the time, don't give you a whole lot. When they have these press conferences, they basically say, yeah, we're excited for the challenge to go up against our opponent this week. We think they're a really good football team, blah, 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 blah. Not a whole lot to get into. And I say that as somebody that covered college football for a living at one point in my life. Alex, that was a little different this week. Dabo Swinney had an interesting comment that he had earlier this week after his off week. He was off on Saturday. They had their bye. And the Marshall head coach, who is going up against Ohio State in what is essentially a blood donor game, you know, the game where you're paid to go to another team's university and you lose by 40. That's what's happening there for Marshall. We're going to get to both of these quotes for you. First, let's start with Dabo, because people ask Dabo Swinney, hey, Saturday, what was the day like for you? How did you watch? Did you watch? What was your Saturday afternoon like? Here's what he had to say in his press conference.
I am a big YouTube TV guy now. All right, I finally figured out how to get that freaking app on my phone. It's like a act of Congress. I mean, you got to have like birth certificates and all kind of stuff to get some of these things. I mean, like, I don't know all these codes from, you know, who's your provider. I mean, it's some crazy stuff on there. But anyway, I got the YouTube TV, and man, it was awesome. I had my phone going, I had my iPad going with 4-screen. And I had the TV going. I would imagine some of y'all probably did the same thing. And so that's really what I did all day. I just watched ball all day, and it was awesome.
First of all, he sounds like such a dad. He's like, I got the YouTube TV. Anytime a person puts the in front of something. The Facebook, the Instagram, the YouTube TV, that is an older person. And I love how it
finally got that doggone app.
He seems like a guy who just like woke up from a coma and realizes you can watch multi-screens on multiple platforms. Man, I had a 4-screen on my iPad and 4-screen on my television. I was watching 8 games at once. It was hilarious.
I also would add this. Dabo this weekend became one of us. I think Nick Saban this year has become one of us.
Bill Belichick has become one of us.
Where they realize, man, it's actually better to not be in the building. It's better to watch games from home. And this is one of the things, going back to our last segment about Tennessee and the NIL fund and the 10% fee. T-Bone's not here to be able to defend himself right now. But one thing that colleges do have to be careful about, and this is why I'm not totally sure, to answer my own question that we never really got to, I'm not totally sure it's going to be like the wave of the future. If you're not Tennessee, where you have almost 100% approval rating by your fan base, you could see some people start to stay home. You want to make sure that you're attracting them to go to your games.
Unless your team's successful. If they're successful, people want to be there.
100%. It is a great product to watch on television at home, especially college football Saturdays where you've got 3, 4, 5 games going on at once.
And when you got the YouTube TV.
Compelling. Yeah, it's pretty great. All right, so the other one, and this is the one that really is my favorite quote from the week. Marshall's head coach was asked about, you know, competing against a team like Ohio State, who they're playing against this weekend, and what it's like in the modern day with NIL and all of this, transfer portal. Here's what he had to say in terms of the comparison between himself at Marshall and what they've got at Ohio State.
Would love to have some of those guys from Ohio State, too. So if they want to transfer on down, we've got a Tudor's Biscuit NIL all you can eat. So if any of those guys that run really, really fast at Ohio State like Tudor's Biscuits, I promise you, all you can eat all day if you transfer here. So, but yeah.
Is he trying to build a selling point to come to Marshall with an all-you-can-eat buffet?
Tudor's.
That, like, it's an actual, like, I
this
thought
is a real place. Tudor's Biscuit World.
For a minute there, I thought he was, like, making a weird nickname for a school tutor that they had for all of their education. That's tampering. What's he tampering with these guys for? You can't be tampering, telling them to come over to Tudor's Biscuit World. Also, it's not Tudor's, T-O-O-T-E-R.
No, T-U-D.
Okay, because Tudor's Biscuit World would be so much better name with that one if it was like the actual Tudor's Biscuit Bar.
Can you imagine if you, like, went on your visit and you're just like a 3-star recruit, right? Run-of-the-mill 3-star recruit, and you were looking at potentially going to Marshall. And they were like, hey, I know you're going to have a lot of other opportunities out there. You know, you can go to West Virginia, you can go to Maryland, you can go to all of these other schools. But we here at Marshall, we have something that sets us apart. all-you-can-eat biscuits.
Come on down to Tudor's.
Where do I sign? Where do I sign the dotted line? Let me get in on the all-you-can-eat biscuits at Tudor's Biscuit World.
You're telling me I can have biscuits and gravy, and I can have cheddar biscuits in the evening? This is unbelievable. Where do I sign?
I don't know what their specific menu looks like.
I don't know if I'd want to get. Oh, it's literally biscuits. Yeah. It is literally biscuits. I just thought they called themselves.
Cheese. They got all kinds of pepperoni and melted cheese.
Oh my god! Oh, that sounds good.
Egg and cheese.
Oh.
They got some lunch items. This looks like Arby's.
If that coach is not already doing commercials, come on down to Tudor's Biscuit World. You can get whatever type of biscuit you want with Tudor's.
They've got the Golden Eagle with Canadian bacon, potato, egg, and cheese.
We need to get a poutine biscuit. Work that Canadian market.
Got an apple biscuit with fried apples on it.
I think I might want to go to Biscuit World.
The Mountaineer has country ham, potato, eggs, and cheese. I can go here.
Man, I just don't know if I'd want to get hit with tampering by endorsing Biscuit World. Got to find other ways to tamper, am I right?
He's Alex. I'm BK. Grant Francis back in the studio for us today, holding things down. We're broadcasting live at the ENB Granite Studios out of the Centene Community Ice Center. Coming up in about 15 minutes or so, we're going to get into some NFL quick hitters. But next, are you guys still holding out any hope for the Matthew Liberatore starter project, or have we officially allowed ourselves to believe in him as a reliever and a reliever alone? We'll talk about that next here on 101 ESPN. Hey, it's BK. If you wake up in the morning and think to yourself, man, I just don't have the same amount of energy that I once did. Well, they might be able to help you out over at Victory Men's Health. Could be a sign of low testosterone. Could also be a sign of some vitamin deficiencies. That was my issue personally. They can take your micronutrient levels over there at Victory Men's Health. They can help you unlock your inner champion today. They have 4 great locations across the St. Louis area, and you can check them out today at victorymenshealth.com. Read all about them over there, whether it's unwanted weight that you've been trying to lose on your own and you just can't find the way to do it, low testosterone, erectile dysfunction. You can book your appointment today. Your first appointment, you go over to there at victorymenshealth.com, put in your name, email, phone number, tell them a little bit about yourself. Tell them you heard about them on 101 ESPN from your guy BK. If you do that over at victorymenshealth.com, that's victorymenshealth.com, you'll unlock your inner champion today.
to more exclusive Blues talk. 101 ESPN is live from the Centene Community Ice Center. Brought to you by Bud Light and E&B Granite. Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
With Alex Ferrario, I'm Brandon Kiley. Tanner Hendrickson is over talking to Doug Armstrong right now, doing like the actual important stuff out here. So he'll be back in studio with us coming up here in like 20 minutes or so, give us all of his takeaways from the introductory, essentially, press conference here for Blues training camp. We're broadcasting live at the E&B Granite Studios out of the Centene Community Ice Center. We're going to be here today, tomorrow, and on Friday as the Blues open up training camp this week. Alex, I want to talk a little bit about the Cardinals, though, because Matthew Liberatore had a pretty impressive night last night. He was able to get himself out of a significant jam, and he did so with 98-mile-per-hour fastball and then a fantastic breaking ball that ended that inning in a strikeout. A really nice night for Matthew Liberatore, and a really good season overall for him as a reliever. When they tried to jerk him back and forth between the rotation and the bullpen, there were some weird moments there. But overall this season, if you just look at his splits as a reliever, he's been pretty fantastic for the Cardinals. Has a 3.6 ERA. Last year as a reliever, had a 2.8 ERA. And this is in line with what he's been basically his entire Major League career now. 5.9 ERA as a starter in 24 appearances as a starter, and a 3.8 ERA now in 61 appearances at the big league level as a reliever. Alex, are you still leaving the light on for Matthew Liberatore as a starter, or are you resigned to the fact that even if he's really good at it, he's probably going to be a reliever long-term at the big league level?
No, he's done as a starter. And to me, I found a high-leverage arm as a reliever, and you will not go back from that. And I understand that's a tough thing to do, especially when you see a guy like Jordan Hicks go on and have success as a starting pitcher. But, man, I think the Cardinals actually unlocked something that's beneficial for them. And this is a guy who can pitch in high-leverage situations, a lefty who has swing and miss stuff, who have the ability to give you multiple innings because he's a starter. I looked at this when I was going through the splits when we were talking about this in our show prep. He has not given up an earned run in the 7th or the 9th inning this season, and he's pitched the most innings in the 7th inning. Think of the high-leverage situations like last night that he's coming into, and he's finding ways to get through it without giving up an earned run. And the comp that we made together, either was earlier this season or it was last season with Matthew Liberatore, was Andrew Miller. Yep. And so Andrew Miller, of course, he was the guy that was used as the starting pitcher. Injuries happened, and then they finally kind of moved him into a bullpen role. That first season as a reliever for Andrew Miller was already 7 years into his Major League career, so he's already been established more so than Matthew Liberatore. But I just looked at this. So that first year as a reliever for Andrew Miller, opponents were hitting 227 against him. Well, opponents were hitting 194 against him. Matthew Liberatore, opponents are hitting 227 against him. But more importantly is the ERA. Liberatore, you mentioned as a reliever this season, 3.6. Andrew Miller, his first year was 3.3 as a reliever. Why couldn't you take what's working for Matthew Liberatore now and saying, damn, what if we could get an Andrew Miller-esque type of pitcher out of Matthew Liberatore, and in 2-3 years when you're hoping to compete, I mean, you're talking about a dude who could be closing out games, or at least somebody who's high leverage for you.
Yeah, I think he's a high leverage reliever, and I think this is ultimately what he's going to be. I would probably some of this depends on what happens in the offseason, right? In terms of, like, do you bring back Kyle Gibson? Do you bring back Eric Fetty? And if those guys are back, yeah, he's just a reliever. You don't even have to mess with it anymore. But if this team decided to just go really young next year and they wanted to have him in the mix for their starting rotation, I would at least have some curiosity about it, you know, because now he has a slider that is a super effective pitch for him. And previously it was something that he would use occasionally, but it wasn't a big-time player for him. He was more, his breaking ball of choice was the curveball. And the curveball was a pretty decent pitch. He got a little bit unlucky with it last year, but overall it was okay. And this year he's essentially ditched it. He's just, like, flipped their usage this season. It all comes back to how does the fastball play? Because his fastball isn't particularly good. And when he pitches deep into games, it's a fastball that loses all of its velocity, which means that it is basically ineffective. So if that's going to be the case for him long term, and he's just never going to be able to find a way to maintain that velocity deeper into the baseball game, he can't be a starter. So my guess is he's probably going to be a reliever for you long term, which means you lost that trade. You did. You lost the deal going up with the Rays where you get Matthew Liberatore and they get Randy Arozarena. Yeah. They won, you lost, boom, end of story.
But it also doesn't have to be viewed as such a negative. Like, sure, you lost the trade, but you might actually have an asset that could benefit you down the road.
And that's what I was going to say. Like, just because you lost the trade doesn't mean you got nothing. This isn't a situation where, like, you traded away a really good player and in return you got somebody that never became a big leaguer. You got a really nice, useful 7th or 8th inning reliever that can help you whenever you are contending again. So I think Matthew Liberatore still has a really significant role for this team, even if he never throws another pitch for the Cardinals as a starter.
Yeah. I just think that's something that could be really good. And frankly, they're in the same position that they were this season, to where you could have a lethal bullpen again next year. Now, all of this really requires what the Cardinals are deciding to do next season. But if you're talking about bringing Kittredge back, which I think we all anticipate, depending on what they do with Ryan Helsley, you've got JoJo Romero, you've got Matthew Liberatore. Maybe you make Steven Matz a bullpen arm if you can't move him. Maybe you bring back Keenan Middleton. You've got some of these younger guys. I mean, this could be an asset for this team. And guess what they missed out on this year? We talked so much about how their bullpen wore down because they used him so much. Man, Matthew Liberatore should have never been going back and forth with as a starter. This guy should have just been this reliever for you all season. Maybe you would have had healthier arms down the stretch.
And if they had done that, we would have found out more about Michael McGreevy.
Yeah.
And that would have been a guy that maybe you saw earlier than what they ultimately were able to get out of him. They've got a lot of options. You've got Riley O'Brien, who potentially could be back next year, but especially from the left side, it's John King, JoJo Romero, Matthew Liberatore, Steven Matz. Those are all options from the left side. That's a lot of left-handed relievers. And so my guess is they'll probably end up filtering through some of that depth on the left side this offseason. But it's a position of strength to be in as an organization, and something that this team has not been able to do in recent years. He's Alex Ferrario. I'm Brandon Kiley. Coming up next, we're going to dive into some NFL quick hitters. T-Bone will give us his update from the Doug Armstrong media availability that's taking place right now, coming up in about 15 minutes. So stay tuned for that. NFL quick hitters is next year on 101 ESPN. Alex, this has been the year from hell when it comes to betting the overs in the NFL. Anything that you want, whether it's passing totals, passing touchdowns. In week 1 and 2, only 17 of 64 starting quarterbacks went over their 1.5 passing touchdowns total. The reason why I bring that up is because that's reflected in the point totals going into this week. Over-under in the Chargers game is set at 35.5. More importantly, the over-under for Thursday Night Football between the Patriots and the Jets, 38.5. The Patriots are at like a 15.5 point team total. I like the over on the Patriots team total. I like the over on 38.5. That doesn't take much. A 24-20 type of a game, you're going over in this one. I think this can absolutely get there. On the Circa Sports app in the state of Illinois, I'm going to go bet right now over 38.5 Thursday Night Football, Patriots versus the Jets.
This is why you need to be getting this Circa Sports app for this upcoming weekend for all your football needs. These tight money line splits, you're going to be making sure you're getting the best odds possible compared to other sports books. They know you'll come back. High app limits, so you're not going to be stopped by how much money you are winning, and incredible customer service. It's the sports betting app that everyone needs for all of their football action. If you or someone you know may have a problem with gambling, call 1-800-GAMBLER or text ILGAMB to 833-234.
Blues talk more often. 101 ESPN is live from the Centene Community Ice Center. Brought to you by Bud Light and E&B Granite. Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
Well, look at that. We've got T-Bone back in with us in studio. E&B Granite Studios out at the Centene Community Ice Center. He was just able to catch up with Doug Armstrong. He'll give us his biggest takeaways from that conversation with Doug Armstrong in a little less than 10 minutes.
Did Doug tell you that we're his favorite show on the radio?
No, but I could tell. When we made eye contact.
Maybe he knew. He's like, oh, there's T-Bone. Guy that hates money for athletes.
Yeah.
That's for sure true. We know that.
Sorry, bringing up old wounds, guys.
Let's get into some NFL quick hitters here on BK and Ferrario. Guys, underdogs of at least 7 points have started the season 3-0 straight up. Straight up. They have won these games 3 of the 3 times that they've been played. Raiders over the Ravens, the Patriots over the Bengals, and the Bucs over the Lions. Is this going to be the start of a trend? Are we seeing big underdogs that are going to be able to win weekly? Are we going to see a lot of teams that are these big underdogs that are going to be covering? What do you guys make of the early season underdogs trend that has emerged?
The preseason has screwed up a lot of these teams that are supposed to be like big-time players and contenders. I don't think that trend continues. I think the first 3, we talk about all the time, first 3-4 weeks are always difficult to handle. I do think what's interesting is a lot of those games that are the upsets are because defenses have just been either incredible or awful. Like you look at that Saints versus Dallas Cowboys game. That wasn't a 7.5 point spread. It was 6. But still, I mean, Dallas's defense, which is supposed to be great, was awful in that game. And then the New Orleans Saints offense just completely erupted. So I don't think it carries on very long. I do think, though, we'll see a couple more of those this week.
Yeah. T-Bone, on the season, teams that are underdogs of at least 6.5 points are 9-0 against the spread.
Yeah, dang. I'm not going to take one of those this week.
Yeah, I was going to say, I know what happens, though, in that trend.
I think I tend to lean on the side of, it's the hardest time for the lines to be right. So that's one of the things that I lean on is in the first 4 weeks, there's just weird-ish that happens. I will say this, though. I do think one thing that has led that does play a factor into this is the lack of passing that we've talked about. Yep. Like when we talk about, the lack of passing, typically what happens in a game in which you kind of look at those spreads and you go, oh, well, like the Chiefs, for example, they'll cover a 6.5 point spread if they're playing, I don't know, like Carolina, for example. Well, why do we say that? It's not just their rosters, their quarterback play. And with the game now moving more towards the running backs, and we're seeing a more run-heavy approach, I think it slows down the clock. It doesn't allow for games to open up as much. I think that's probably one of the trends that I would also put a kind of bow on as, okay, that's why it's happening.
Fewer plays.
Exactly.
When the clock continues to run, you run the ball, clock continues to run, there's fewer plays that are able to be ran over the course of a game, which means fewer yards, fewer points, fewer possessions. That's just the way that it goes. This week we have the Patriots, the Giants, the Broncos, the Rams, and Washington all at plus 6.5 or better. Do you guys think that one of those teams will end up covering? So I've got Patriots at the Jets, Alex. We've got the Giants at the Cleveland Browns. The Broncos at the Denver Broncos.
Buccaneers.
The Buccaneers are another one.
No, the Buccaneers are with the Broncos. You said Broncos at Denver Bronco.
Broncos at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And then the Rams are going up this week against the 49ers at home, and they're 7.5 point underdogs. Oh, my God. And then on Monday Night Football, it's the Washington Commanders 7.5 point underdog on the road at the Bengals.
I think if there was
to pick one, who'd you go with?
If I had to pick one, oh God,
I think it's Thursday night for me.
I don't
at the Jets.
I don't know about. I still don't buy into this New England team, but
I don't either, but I think it's going to be low scoring. Like
I think it'd be the
20.
Are the Giants the underdog or the Browns? Did you say the Giants? I would do the Giants-Browns. I don't like that offense for Cleveland, and I know their defense is tough. So that, to me, screams low scoring, and I think if you're going to cover a spread, probably that one.
The point totals this week, man. 38, 38, 43, 45, 49. Eagles Saints. There's your shootout.
Watch that one be like 17-13.
35, 39, 37, 39, 41.
Sounds
51. Lions, Cardinals.
Sounds like another apple picking.
Sirens. Ravens, Cowboys, 48.
Ooh,
44.
Sounds like another
46,
apple picking weekend.
45, 46. It's rough, man.
Unless you love defenses like T-Bone.
I do love a good defensive bout. I would say for me it's probably the Rams. They got killed last week. I don't think they're that bad, even with all their injuries. I think McVay's going to have them ready to play. San Fran's dealing with injuries as well. I actually think they probably are going to lean heavier on Kyron Williams now in the running game. So I think that's where you could see that one really get slowed down. McVay, I think he's going to try and play that game slower against San Francisco, keep them off the field. I think that's how you get it closer. I don't think they win, but they keep it close in that 7-point spread.
It's a 14-point loss for your Rams.
Next thing up here, fantasy football help for our listeners.
Oh, I don't think you need help from any of us.
The Chiefs' backfield is going to be one of the spots that is most intriguing going into this weekend. Chiefs have good offense, and their running back scores a bunch of points because they get into the red zone, and they throw to the running back a decent amount as well. You got Samaje Perine, former Cincinnati, Denver Broncos running back, who's barely been involved, but is traditionally a passing downs back. You got Carson Steele, the man of steel.
Crocodile Hunter.
Who got some carries last week, even prior to Isaiah Pacheco going down. And they just brought in Kareem Hunt yesterday, and Andy Reid said earlier today that he could be ready to go by Sunday because he already knows a decent amount of the playbook. If you had to start one of those three guys this weekend, Alex, who would you go with? Steele, Hunt, or Perine?
Mine would be Kareem Hunt. If they say he's going to be ready, or he could be ready to go, my guess is you're going to get him ready to go as much as possible because you don't trust those other two. I would go Kareem Hunt.
I think I would go Steele. I worry about Hunt, even though they claim he's ready for the playbook. Surely he's not ready to take on a major workload, right? I can't imagine. And then Perine, I don't think is the guy you want running. Steele to me is like the hand the football off, and he probably doesn't have like a huge game. I know he's just going to put his head down and run through whatever hole is in front of him. So I would go with Steele. That's who I would start if you had to with one of those three guys.
I think it's no contest. I think it's clearly Carson Steele. I think he was already expected to be one of their short yardage backs. They used him in short yardage situations and a near goal line situation last week, so you can have him in that spot. The other thing is he's going to be in there for a couple of passing downs as well. So I think Carson Steele's the guy that I'm starting, and I'm doing it with confidence. I see him as a legit RB2 this week. This is different than the Jalen Wright thing from last week. This could be fun. He might score 20. He also could score you 0. Carson Steele is legit. I would be shocked if he gets less than 5 fantasy points this week. I'm shocked. Now, that would be a disappointment, obviously, but at least you don't have a floor of 0 points, which is what we had last week with Jalen Wright.
Didn't he get like 0.4?
0.7.
Oh.
0.7.
You round that up, it's 1.
Yeah.
I have heard that.
He was right there. All right, next thing up here. The NFL just announced their first-time Hall of Fame nominees for the class of 2025. They include Eli Manning, Luke Kuechly, Terrell Suggs, and Adam Vinatieri. If I told you can have one of those guys getting in as a first ballot Hall of Famer, who would you go with? Eli Manning, Luke Kuechly, Terrell Suggs, Adam Vinatieri. Who would you guys choose? I've got a very clear answer on this.
Man.
Other first-time candidates include Marshawn Lynch, Demaryius Thomas, Delaney Walker. He's probably not going to get in. And Earl Thomas.
Shoot. I mean, I think mine would probably be Adam Vinatieri.
Boom. That's the correct answer.
That's kind of who I was thinking, but I didn't know if I wanted to be the guy that said a kicker.
No, he's the obvious answer.
Terrell Suggs was the other one I was thinking, but you were such a part of elite defense with Ed Reed and Ray Lewis that it's like, you were great, but there's a lot of guys with you.
He kind of got overshadowed because Kuechly was the one that I thought of first before Suggs.
Too short.
Yeah,
that's kind of what I thought too, because he got hurt a lot. So that's why I don't know if you could go with him. The guy that the actual correct answer is going to be Eli Manning.
Oh, I was going to say Eli's going in.
That's who the voters will vote
that's
for.
going in. You can hate him all you want, Derek Jeter, but he's going to get in, man.
He literally had 2 Super Bowl runs that
he made the Patriots bleed.
And if you look at his numbers from those runs, like he had clutch plays, but it was a lot like Joe Burrow's first Super Bowl run, where it was like, yeah, he has a few clutch plays, but also the defense is the reason why this team's in the Super Bowl. Yeah. And you look back on those Giants teams, and it was Spags. That's the one that deserves to go into the Hall of Fame for them winning those Super Bowls.
How dare you take it away from that man?
Yeah,
neither here nor there.
He kind of threw it up just like Richardson does, and his wideout came down with it.
He made the Patriots bleed.
You can't tell the story of the 21st century of the NFL without talking about Adam Vinatieri.
Oh, absolutely not. Dude was incredible.
He won them multiple Super Bowls. That guy deserves to be in the Hall of Fame.
Also, fantasy football-wise, just get those points every single week because he's putting up 10 for you.
That dude was amazing, and he was as clutch as they came in the NFL, doing it both for the Patriots and then eventually the Colts as well when they were going on their runs. So, Adam Vinatieri to me is a clear-cut, no doubt about it, should be a Hall of Famer. I would put him in on the first ballot over Eli Manning, personally.
Yeah,
he was
that decade's version of Tucker. And now we've got Tucker that's that guy. Granted, he's struggled from 50-plus lately, but, he's always been a guy, just like Vinatieri, that you could lock in. You say, okay, best kicker in the NFL.
There's one obvious difference, though. One of them went to Super Bowls and won them.
Oh, well, okay, yeah. I didn't know where you were going. I was like, are you going to refer back to the 50-yard struggles?
Season every year.
Hey, he's got a Super Bowl, doesn't he?
Does Tucker?
Wasn't he on the team that last won?
Yeah.
Yeah. Take that.
Suck it.
Yeah, Tucker hater.
You just hate kickers.
I forgot that Tucker's been there for that long. Tucker's getting old, man. He's 35 years old.
Yeah, but that leg,
close
baby.
to the end for that guy.
No, you're crazy.
Dude, he can't kick from 50-plus anymore.
No, he's like one for his last 8 or something.
It was just bad weather conditions.
He's one for his last 8. Yeah. And he was 9 for 14 in 2022.
What was his first season?
He'll be fine.
His first season was 2012, and he was 4 for 4.
You know what doesn't get old? Leg muscles. That'll be there forever.
That's
coming up in about 15 minutes or so. We're going to get into the BK and Ferrario Rewind, but next we're going to hear from Tanner Hendrickson what the biggest takeaways were from Doug Armstrong's first media availability at Blues training camp. He'll tell us what he had to say next year on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario with you to talk about my friends over at Classic Air Care. I have already scheduled my winter tune-up check with my maintenance agreement with them. I got them coming out in a couple of weeks to check over our heater before we flip it on. I'm not trying to flip it on yet, but need to make sure it's good to go. And that's why I'm a part of this maintenance agreement, because one time in the summer, one time in the fall, they come out, they check it out, they make sure I'm good to go, they get me through the season. But look, if you're in the market for a new HVAC system, now is the time to do it, because from what Classic Air Care has told me, with the new government regulations on the fluids that they use in the HVAC system, that is going to go up 15 to 20% once January 1st hits. So if you are purchasing a new HVAC system in the year 2025, it's going to cost you a lot more because of some of the regulations. So now's the time to get them out there, check out your unit if it's old, and install that brand new unit and get incredible customer service, knowledgeable technicians, be a part of their maintenance agreement, and be always taken care of by Classic Air Care. You can schedule online with them, or you can give them a call. Just tell them Alex Ferrario sent you. Once again, that's Classic Air Care or ClassicAirCare.com.
Grant Francis here with a SportsCenter update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Cardinals were victorious last night, 3-1 over the Pirates as Lance Lynn picked up a win. He went 6 innings last night, only had 4 hits against him and 1 earned run. And Jordan Walker had a big home run. He had to hit the go-ahead home run yesterday, his 4th of the season and 4th of the month of September. Cardinals are back above 500, 76-75. Blow to build on that tonight as it's game 3 of 4 in the series against Pittsburgh. It'll be sunny gray for the Cardinals tonight. First pitch will be at 6:45. And if you want some other baseball coverage here on 101 ESPN, you can hear Mariners and Yankees tonight right here on 101 ESPN. Pregame for that will start at 8 o'clock. I'm Grant Francis. The SportsCenter update's been driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
With Alex and T1 on BK, we're broadcasting live at the Centene Community Ice Center where the Blues today had their media day at the unofficial start of Blues training camp. The opening drive will be broadcasting live from here tomorrow. They're going to be joined by Doug Armstrong during their show, so be sure to stay tuned for that. That is tomorrow. 7 to 10 o'clock is when you can hear the opening drive with Randy, Brooke, and Dan, and the Rocky will be out here with them as well tomorrow. But Doug Armstrong did just talk to the assembled media here at the Centene Community Ice Center, and our guy T-Bone was out there hanging out with all of the assembled media, asking his questions to Doug Armstrong. T-Bone now has the update for us in terms of what Army was able to pass along. T-Bone, what did you learn today from Doug Armstrong prior to Blues training camp?
Well, let's start with the one that we've talked about all offseason, which is Pavel Buchnevich, and if he's going to be playing center. And Army was specifically asked, is Pavel Buchnevich, or do you expect to see Pavel Buchnevich at the winger and center in training camp? And he said, I expect to see him at center. It sounds like to me that Doug Armstrong is expecting Pavel Buchnevich to play. The way I read it was play center. Now, maybe he just meant reps, but the way I understood it was he expects him to play center for the St. Louis Blues going into training camp here. Now, he did not specify what that means for Braden Chen. That was the one that's my number one takeaway from availability.
I mean, I hate it. I've made myself pretty upfront and honest with the idea of Booch as a centerman and how I think he's better as a winger. What I'll be curious about is, are they having Shen take reps at center too? Because that might be a competition that we're not talking about. Who plays better in that spot? Because what you have is you have a ton of wingers on this team. Like, you got a lot of guys who can play wing, whether it's the Boldukes, the Holloways, the Sods, the Texiers moving things around.
Texier, by the way, also can play center and so Holloway.
Yeah. So, my guess is, because they got 3 groups for these first preseasons, and look, typically how they go is the first 2 preseasons, you get 1 or 2 vets on each team that go and travel because you think you have to send a certain amount of NHL games played on a team for preseason action. I'm hopeful that the team is also experimenting with Shen at center, and they just want to see what it looks like with Booch, because I don't think it makes sense to have Booch as a centerman. But if he is a centerman, man, the line combinations look a little bit different to me in terms of how I view this roster moving forward.
Yeah, it also makes me wonder, are they really going to do Thomas, Booch, Foxa, and Sonny as their centers going down the middle? That would not be my personal preference as to the way that they go with this, but I'm a little surprised to hear that, to be honest with you. Yeah. I thought that if they had seen positive returns from Shen or Dvorsky, they would have decided, Booch is just going to be a winger for us.
My guess is Shen will be doing reps at center, too. He's going to be a part of a different group. You'll see different pairings with it. I wonder if they're going to try and pair up certain guys. I wonder if they have a Dalibor Dvorsky maybe playing on a wing with Booch to get some center reps throughout line combinations. Maybe they put a Holloway there. I wonder if they put a Brandon Saad with Braden Shen. I can see those guys being on different groups as centermen, seeing if chemistry builds up. And if it does, you already know what Old Faithful is. It's Pavel Buchnevich and Robert Thomas. It works together. Neighbors can slide over to the right side, and Kyrou can work with Shen. But to start, I wonder if they want to find out who's the better comp right now and what we can get out of.
Yeah, the other thing that I would add, just final thoughts on this, if Booch is going to be center for them this year, if he's going to be the second-line center to start things out, Dvorsky ain't making this team.
No, not at all.
If that's the current plan is for Booch to be the center, Dvorsky's not making the team, and I do think it opens things up a little bit more for Bolduc.
I was just going to say, Bolduc has a much better shot.
Much more interesting, and Dvorsky becomes that much more difficult to make the roster.
And I don't know if there was one quote that stuck out to me, but based on the way Army talked, it did sound like it's going to be a hard task for Dalibor Dvorsky to make this roster come opening.
Especially if Sonny is going to be available, which it sounds like that he said that.
Sonny apparently is going to go through training camp. He'll be kind of limited in contact at the very beginning. He won't play in preseason games. Based on the way Army said it, he said he hopes he should be available for opening night.
You've got versatility at the center spot. So I really do not see Dvorsky making this team unless he just has an unreal camp, because now you've got the option of Booch, you've got Shen, you've got Thomas, Sundqvist, Faksa, but then think of the versatility. My guess is Nathan Walker's going to be the extra forward on this team when camp breaks. That's a guy who can play center. Texier, you mentioned, can play center. They've got the Holloway, if they want to try that. They've got the versatility. They're just, at least it seemingly would be that they're going to find out who's got the upper hand in that Booch or Shen.
All right, one thing that I love about Doug Armstrong, he does this every year. He lays out what his expectations are for the team. And last year he said, hey, we think probably not top 3 in the Central, but we're fighting for that next tier in the Central Division. That's exactly where they were. T-Bone, I don't know if he was asked directly about that, but what did he say about his expectations for this team heading into 2024?
Yeah, he sounds like a guy that expects his team to compete for a playoff spot again. Kind of like they were last year. I mean, they were in it last year. If they don't have the blunders, as we've talked about, they probably are a playoff team.
Did he talk about them the same way that he did last year, where he's like, yeah, we're not up there, but we're like kind of in that middle of the Central?
He didn't say
How did he describe it?
He did not say we're in the middle, but he also didn't say we're up at the top. You know, he kind of left it open-ended as, I think we can compete with these teams in the Central. And take that how you will. I didn't read that as he was saying we can compete with the top 3.
No, that's fine.
To me, it was kind of reading it
more confidence than what he said last year. Last year it was a, we'll probably be in the middle of the Central.
Compete with the teams in the Central isn't just Nashville, Colorado, Winnipeg. It's also Minnesota, it's Utah. Like, everybody in the Central, with the exception of Chicago, has high expectations of being a playoff team. And I got to be honest with them, with the exception of Nashville last season, you did play, well, Nashville and Winnipeg, because Winnipeg spanked you around. You beat Colorado twice. You beat Dallas 3 times and lost once in overtime. You beat up on Arizona, if I'm not mistaken. You beat up on Minnesota. Like, you did compete with the Central Division teams last year, and now you're better.
Yeah, and now what I find interesting about this goes to one of the comments that he was asked about the retool and where he sees it at as of right now. He said they're on to the next phase of the retool, which is they're no longer in a spot where they are bringing in assets. It is more on the stage of, okay, it's time to do less talking and start doing some producing. Time to start showing a little bit more results. And he talked a little bit about we're kind of in that development phase now, which makes it a little interesting of, okay, we're in development phase while also, in my opinion, sounding more confident as them potentially being a playoff team, kind of trying to do the balance of both worlds, which we talk about all the time.
Yeah, it's a high wire act when you try to do that, because then it becomes on it. It's easy for Army, honestly, because, like, you get in all of this talent, you set the expectations where it should be, and then you say, we should win, we should also develop. And that's, like, from the 10,000-foot view, cool. Sounds great.
Easy.
And then you get down to the coach's perspective, and this is where it becomes very difficult. Because on any given night, it becomes a, how do I reward ice time? Who is going to be in the lineup versus out of the lineup? We saw this last year with Bolduc. We all got very frustrated towards the end of the season, Alex, about what Bolduc's role was with this team, because they would pull him out of the lineup suddenly because they were trying to get into the postseason. It was like, yeah, but that's not what this year was all about. It was about getting these experiences for these young guys. We knew that they probably weren't going to be a playoff team. So this year there is going to be a little tug and pull at times of, which one takes precedent? Is the primary goal this year to make the playoffs, or is the primary goal this year to get that development in? Because there will be points in time where the two are diametrically opposed.
You've built this roster, though, to where you can do both at the same time. You've built this roster enough to where Bolduc does not have to take a sniff of the NHL roster. Now, injuries happen. That's when you get that opportunity. But you've built this so much that Bolduc and Dvorsky, and I know it's frustrating to hear because as a fan, you saw the strides forward last season with Bolduc at the NHL level, and you're thinking, okay, well, let's give him more reps. But again, I go back to the quote that Armstrong had with Cam Jansen and Strickland on their podcast about how that first year he felt like, he may have ruined Jake Neighbors getting him up too fast. Man, you're doing this. You didn't do it last year because your wingers sucked, essentially. Like Kapanen and Verona were not the guys you thought they were. So you had to bring up Bolduc. You had to bring up Dean. Man, this year you've got Joseph, Texier, you've got Holloway, and you've got Sundqvist, Toropchenko. You've got all these guys so that Bolduc, from start to finish next season, is going to be with Steve Konowalchuk in the minor leagues, playing the number one wing with Dvorsky on the number one center and playing the power play, the penalty kill, so that next season in training camp, you come into it and say, he should be on this roster. And if not, something happened developmentally.
That's Alex Ferrario. He's Tanner Hendrickson, and I'm Brandon Kiley. Join 101 ESPN for Blues and Brews on Friday night at the Anheuser-Busch Brewery. Get fired up for the blues season at this outdoor street party. It features live music from country music star Matt Stell, plus appearances by Braden Shin, Jake Neighbors, Pavel Buchnevich, Drew Bannister, and many other blues. Tickets on sale right now. 101ESPN.com is where you find all of the details. We hope to see you on Friday night. Blues and Brews, refreshed by Bud Light and by 101 ESPN. Coming up in the next segment, we are going to give you a chance to win a pair of tickets to see Brooks and Dunn. Plus, we'll hit the rewind here on BK and Ferrario.
run it back with a daily rewind on BK and Ferrario. Brought to you by Gloria Loom, your home sold guaranteed realty. Selling your home begins at GloriaHasTheBuyers.com.
This week, between us and the Fast Lane, each day you've got 2 opportunities to win a pair of tickets to see Brooks and Dunn. That is coming up on April 25th at the Enterprise Center. So right now is that chance for today on our show. You'll have another one on the Fast Lane, and then each of the next couple of days here on BK and Ferrario as well. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. If you were listening earlier today, we told you about a head coach that got to watch something on the YouTube TV that he doesn't typically get to watch. Who was that head coach? Name him. Be texter number 101 at 314-399-9646. And you are going home with a pair of tickets to see Brooks and Dunn with special guest David Lee Murphy. That's coming up on April 25th. Check out more details at 101ESPN.com. Alex, to finish out the show today, I want to finish our conversation about the Blues. T-Bone just gave us the update from Doug Armstrong. We've been out here since 7 a.m. today talking to a bunch of different players, going through the media day stuff. We do this every year, and Randy calls it fans with access, right? That's what we kind of have here as a part of the station. And so we have access to these players. We get to see them. We get to talk with them. Last year, I felt like the vibes were pretty good. They were better than the year previously. 2 years ago, I came in and I was like, woo! I don't know about all this, boys. This is not a good situation for the St. Louis Blues. I felt like there was more personality, more excitement about the Blues going into this season than there have been either of the previous 2 years. That doesn't mean they're going to be better, but it means it feels better right now. Yep. Did you get the same vibe this morning as we were talking with some of the guys?
I did. Like, just different personalities of different players. It seems like this season kind of got here fast enough. I mean, even Jake Neighbors was telling us like that this offseason was too long, and we joked with him, and it's like, man, it's rare to say something like that. He goes, man, he's like, I need hockey. It's like, I can't do anything if I don't have hockey. I think the main reason for me why those personalities were a little bit more open up, why it felt a little bit more excited, and if you talk to anybody, whether it's the players, some of the broadcasters, they'll tell you, like, they view this team as a lot more competitive as years past. I think it's because of the additions Doug Armstrong has done. I think Doug Armstrong did this to create this attitude because you brought in a lot of guys who feel like they can add more competition. The past couple of years, we could sit here and convince ourselves like, oh, well, they tried to upgrade it. They didn't. Like, you brought in certain guys that were here to, like, maybe rejuvenate their career, but you knew what was taking place. But now you've brought in a guy who's won a Stanley Cup in Matthew Joseph, a guy who's been to a couple Stanley Cups in Radek Faksa. You've brought in Broberg and Holloway to kind of reignite that youth movement. They've brought in pieces that creates the excitement, which is why I think the core players who have been here for the last 2 years seem more excited because they've got a kind of new, fresh take with this roster.
I like what you said there, and T-Bone, I want to get your thoughts on this. But, like, you mentioned how previously they were looking for guys that were going to have like a career renaissance here, and that's what it felt like at the time. It was like 27, 28-year-old players like Kapanen, for example, who once had a little bit of success and then it went away. And then Vrana, who once had a little bit of success, went into the player assistance program, and then it just didn't work for him here. That's not really what they've done this offseason. This offseason is, can we get the upswing? Can we get the player that had the early career success that Kapanen and Vrana had? T-Bone, what was your vibe check from the St. Louis Blues earlier today?
Yeah, I thought vibes were good. I do think they had better personalities than from a year ago. I do say, to your point there, Army did mention in his availability that, you know, they didn't have, I don't remember how he framed it. He mentioned kind of like stopgap guys. He said we now have guys that are in the nucleus, you know, that we can build. I know I said that
nucleus.
wrong. Everybody knows what I said.
Dude, you had it. Don't look at BK, the man of integrity over here. Unbelievable.
I got a JUCO degree. Deal with it. He mentioned that and that they have that to hopefully build upon as well. And he mentioned that the age that they have, you know, I don't take too much from vibes. You know, we talked about good vibes last year and that team was kind of blah. I do think they've got better personalities.
Last year was better vibes. I wouldn't call them good. They were actually good vibes.
But remember what 2 years ago was compared to last year. It's like you could only go up.
From here to here.
It was like the Cardinals.
You're like here. I'm not saying they're like The team that won the cup.
Oh, dude.
When things were going well, vibes were up here.
Yeah, well, when they were going well.
Because when they weren't. And then it was here.
When they weren't, it's down here. You can't see my hand, but it is down here.
He's Alex Ferrario. That's Tanner Hendrickson, and I'm Brandon Kiley. We've been broadcasting live today at the Centene Community Ice Center. We're going to be here each of the next 2 days as well for Blues training camp. Shout out to Grant Francis for holding it down back in the studio for us. Thank you all very much for listening. If you guys missed anything, be sure to check it out on the podcast page. 101ESPN.com and the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all presented by
Dobbs Tire and Auto Center.
We'll talk to you guys tomorrow at 11 a.m. Fastlane's coming up next here on 101 ESPN.